This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Alex Foster, www.alexfoster.me.uk. The Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. Edited by Laing Purves. This reading is based on the book The Canterbury Tales and Other Poems. The original text contains poems by Chaucer and a lot of notes and explanations by the editor. To view these, please visit the Gutenberg eText link on the LibriVox catalogue page of the Canterbury Tales. The Franklin's Tale. Prologue. In faith, squire, thou hast thee well acquit, and gentilly I praise well thy wit, quoth the Franklin. Considering thy youth, so feelingly thou speakest, sir, I allow thee, as to thy doom, there is none that is here of eloquence that shall be thy peer. If that thou live, God give thee good chance, and in virtue send thee continuance, for of thy speaking I have great dainty. I have a son, and by the Trinity, it were me lever than 20 pound worth land, though it right now were fallen in my hand, he were a man of such discretion, and yet that be, fie on possession. But if a man be virtuous withal, I have my son snibbed, and yet shall, for he to virtue listeth not intend, but for to play at dice and to dispend, and lose all that he hath, is his usage, and he had lever talk with a page than to commune with any gentle wight, there he might learn gentilesse aricht. Straw for your gentilesse, quoth our host. What, Franklin, pardie sir, well thou wost, that each of you might tellen be the least, a tale or two, or breake his behest. That know I well, sir, quoth the Franklin. I pray you have me not in disdain, though I to this man speak a word or two. Tell on thy tale without wordes mo. Gladly, sir host, quoth he, I will obey unto your will. Now hearken what I say. I will you not contrary in no wise, as far as that my wittes may suffice. I pray to God that it may please you, then what I tell, that it is good enow. These oldie gentle Bretons in their days of diverse adventures made lays, rhymeden in their firste Breton tongue, which lays with their instruments they sung, or else reade them for their pleasance, and one of them have I in remembrance, which I shall say with good will as I can. But, sirs, because I am a borrow man, at my beginning first I you beseech, have me excused of my rude speech. I learned never rhetoric, certain. Thing that I must speak, it must be bare and plain. I slept never on the mount of Parnasso, nor learned Marcus Tullius Cicero. Colours know I none without a dread, but such colours as growen in the mead, or else such as men dye with or paint. Colours of rhetoric be to me quaint, my spirit feeleth not of such matter. But if you list, my tale shall ye hear. The Franklin's Tale. In Armoric, that is called Bretagne, there was a knight that loved and did his pain to serve a lady in his beste wise, and many a labour, many a great emprise, he for his lady wrought ere she were won, for she was one the fairest under sun, and eke thereto come of so high kindred, that well unnethes dost this knight for dread. Tell her his woe, his pain, and his distress, but at the last she for his worthiness, and namely for his unique obeisance, hath such a pity caught of his penance, that privily she fell of his accord, to take him for her husband and her lord, of such lordship as men have over their wives. And for to lead the more in bliss their lives, of his free will he swore her as a knecht, that never in all his day he day nor nicht should take upon himself no mastery against her will, nor kithe her jealous eye, but her obey, and follow her will in all, as any lover to his lady shall. Save that the name of sovereignty, that would he have, for shame for his degree. She thanked him, and with full great humbless she said, Sir, none of your gentleness ye proffer me to have so large a reign, ne woulde God never betwixt us twain, as in my guilt, were either war or strife. Sir, I will be your humble true wife. Have here my troth, till that my hearte brest. Thus be they both in quiet and in rest. For one thing, sires, safely dare I say, that friends ever each other must obey, if they will longer hold in company, Love will not be constrained by mastery. When mastery comes, the god of love anon beateth his wings, and farewell, he is gone. Love is a thing as any spirit free. Women of kind desire liberty, and not to be constrained as a thrall. And so do men, if soothly I say shall. Look who that is most patient in love. He is at his advantage all above. Patience is a high virtue certain, for it vanquisheth, as these clerks sayn, things that rigour never should attain. For every word men may not chide or plain, learn to suffer, or so may I go. Ye shall it learn whether ye will or no. For in this world certain no wish there is, that he not doth or saith sometimes amiss, ire, or sickness, or constellation, wine, woe, or changing of complexion, causeth full oft to do amiss or speaken. On every wrong a man may not be recon. After the time must be temperance, in every wight that can of governance. And therefore hath his worthy wise knight to live in ease, sufferance her behight. And she to him full wisly gan to swear, that never should there be a default in her. Here may men see a humble wife accord. Thus hath she taken her servant and her lord, servant in love and lord in marriage. Then he was both in lordship and servage. Servage? Nay, but in lordship all above, since he had both his lady and his love. His lady certes, and his wife also, the which that law of love accordeth to. And when he was in this prosperity, home with his wife he went to his country, not far from Penmark, where his dwelling was. And there he lived in bliss and in solace. Who coulde tell but he had wedded be the joy, the ease, and the prosperity that is betwixt a husband and his wife. A year and more lasted this blissful life, till that this knight, of whom I spake thus, that of Cerrod was called avarice, shop him to go and dwell a year or twain in Engleland, that was called eke Breton, to seek in armours worship and honour. For all his lust he set in such labour, and dwelled there 2 years, the book saith thus. Now will I stint of this avarice, and speak I will of Dorigen his wife, that loved her husband as her hearte's life. For his absence weepeth she and seeketh, as do those noble wives that them liketh. She mourneth, waketh, waileth, fasteth, plaineth. Desire of his presence her so distraineth, that all this wide world she set at naught. Her friends, which they knew her heavy thought, comfort her in all they ever they may. They preach her, they tell her night and day, that causeless she slays herself, alas. And every comfort possible in this case they do to her, with all their business, and all to make her leave her heaviness. By process, as ye know in every one, men may so long graven in a stone, till some figure therein imprinted be. So long have they comforted her, till she received hath, by hope and by reason, the imprinting of their consolation. Through which her greater sorrow gan assuage. She may not always duren in such rage. And eke avarice, in all of this care, hath sent his letters home of his welfare, and that he will come hastily again, or else had this sorrow her hearty slain. Her friendes saw her sorrow gin to slake, and prayed on her knees for Godde's sake to come and roamen in their company, away to drave her darker fantasy. And finally she granted that request, for well she saw that it was for the best. Now stood her castle faster by the sea, and often with her friends walked she, her to disport upon the bank on high. There as many a ship and barge sigh, sailing their courses where them list to go. But then was that a parcel of her woe, for to herself full oft, "Alas," said she, "is there no ship of so many as I see will bring her home my lord? Then were my heart all warished of this bitter pain's smart." Another time she would sit and think, and cast her eyen downward from the brink. But when she saw the grisly rockers black, for very fear she would her hearte quack, that on her feet she might not sustain, then would she sit down upon the green, and piteously into the sea behold, and say right thus, with careful sighs cold: "Eternal God, that through thy purveyance leadest this world by certain governance, in idle, as men say, ye nothing make. But Lord, these grisly friendly rockers black, that seem rather a foul confusion of work than any fair creation of such a perfect wise God and stable, why have ye wrought this work unreasonable? For by this work north, south, or east, or west, there is not fostered man, nor bird, nor beast. it doth no good to my wit, but annoyeth. See ye not, Lord, how mankind it destroyeth? 100,000 bodies of mankind have Rockies slain. All be they not in mind, which mankind is so fair part of thy work. Thou madest it like to thine owen mark. Then seemed it ye had a great charter toward mankind. But how then may it be that ye such meanness make it to destroy? Which meanness do no good, but ever annoy. I wot well, clerkes will say as them lest, by arguments, that all is for the best. Although I can the causes not y know, but thilke God that made the wind to blow, as keep my lord, this is my conclusion. To clerks leave I all disputation, but would to God that all these rockes black were sunken into hell for his sake. These rocks slay mine hearte for all the fear. Thus would she say with many a piteous tear. Her friends saw that it was no disport to roam by the sea, but discomfort, and shop them for to play somewhere else. They led her by rivers and by wells, and eke in other places delectables. They dancen, and they play at chess and tables. So on a day, right in the morning tide, unto a garden that was there beside, in which they had made their ordinance of victual and of other purveyance, they go and play them all the longe day. And this was on the 6th morrow of May, which May had planted with his soft showers. This garden full of leaves and of flowers, and craft of manne's hand, so curiously arrayed had this garden truly, that never was there a garden of such price, but if it were the very paradise. The odour of flowers and the freshe sight would have maked any hearte light that e'er was born, but if too great sickness or too great sorrow held it in distress. So full it was of beauty and pleasance, and after dinner they began to dance and sing also, save Dorigen alone, who made away her complaint and her moan, for she saw not him on the dance go that was her husband and her love also. But natheless she must a time abide, and with good hope let her sorrow slide. Upon this dance, among other men, danced a squire before Dorigen, that fresher was and jollier of array as to my doom than is the month of May. He sang and danced, passing any man that is or was since that the world began. Therewith he was, if man should him descrive, one of the best faring men alive, young, strong, and virtuous, and rich and wise, and well beloved, and holden in great price. And shortly of the sooth I telle shall, unweeting of this Dorigen at all, this lusty squire, servant to Venus, which that he called was Aurelius, had loved her best of any creature, 2 year and more as was his aventure. But never durst he tell her his grievance, without a cup he drank all his penance. He was despaired, nothing durst he say, save in his songes somewhat would he ray his woe, as in a general complaining he said he loved, and was beloved nothing. Of such a matter made he many lays, songes, complainters, roundels, viriles, how that he durste not his sorrow tell, but languished as doth a fury in hell, and die he must, he said, as did Echo for Narcissus, that durst not tell her woe. In other manner than ye hear me say, he durste not to her his woe betray, save that paraventure sometimes at dances, where younger folk keep their observances, it may well be he looked on her face in such a wise as man that asketh grace, but nothing wiste she of his intent. Nevertheless it happened, ere they thennes went, because that he was her neighbour, and he was a man of worship and honour, and she had knowen him of time yore. They fell in speech, and forth aye more and more unto his purpose drew Aurelius. And when he saw his time, he saide thus: "Madam," quoth he, "by God that this worlde made, so that I wist it might your hearte gladde, I would, that day that your Arviragus went over sea, that I, Aurelius, had gone where I should never come again. For well I wot my service is in vain, my guerdon is but bursting of mine heart. Madam, rue upon my pain as smart, for with a word ye may me slay or save. Here at your feet God would that I were grave. I have now no leisure more to say. Have mercy, sweet, or you will do me day." She gan to look upon Aurelius. "Is this your will?" quoth she, "and say ye thus?" "Ne'er erst," quoth she, "I wiste what ye meant, but now, Aurelius, I know your attent. By thilke God that gave me soul and life, never shall I be an untrue wife, in word nor work, as far as I am wit. I will be this to whom that I am knit. Take this for final answer as of me." But after that in play thus saide she: "Aurelius," quoth she, "by high God above, yet will I grante you to be your love, since I see you so piteously complain. Lookye, what day that endelong Bretagne ye remove all the rockies, stone by stone, that they let ship nor boat to gon, I say, when ye have made this coast so clean of rockies, that there is no stone seen, then will I love you best of any man. Have here my troth, in all that I never can, for well I wot that it shall ne'er betide in such folly out of your herte glide. What dainty should a man have in his life, for to go to love another manne's wife, that hath her body whenever him liketh?" Aurelius full often sore siketh. "Is there none other grace in you?" quoth he. "No, by that Lord," quoth she, "that maked me." Woe was Aurelius when he that heard, and with a sorrowful heart he thus answered: "Madam," quoth he, "this were an impossible, then must I die of sudden death horrible." And with that word he turned him anon. Then came her other friends many a one, and in the alleys roamed up and down, and nothing wist of this conclusion, but suddenly began to revel new, till that the brighte sun had lost his hue, for the horizon had reft the sun his light. This is as much to say as it was night. And home they go in mirth and solace, save only wretched Aurelius, alas! He to his house is gone with sorrowful heart. He said he may not from his death start. Him seemed that he felt his hearte cold. Up to the heaven his handes gan he hold, and on his knees bare he set him down, and in his raving said his orison. For very woe out of his wit he brayed. He wist not what he spake, but thus he said with piteous heart. His plaint hath he begun unto the gods, and first unto the sun. He said, "Apollo, God and governor of every plant, herb, tree, and flower, thou givest, after thy declination, to each of them his time and his season, and thine herberow changeth low and high. Lord Phoebus, cast thy merciable eye on wretched Aurelius, which that am but lorn. Lo, Lord, my lady hath my death y sworn, without a guilt, but thy benignity. Upon my deadly heart have some pity. For well I wot, Lord Phoebus, if you lest, ye may me helpe, save my lady best. Now vouchsafe that I may you devise, how that I may be holp, and in what wise. Your blissful sister Lucina the sheen, that of the sea is chief goddess and queen, though Neptunus have deity in the sea, yet empress above him is she. Ye know well, Lord, that right as her desire is to be quicked and lighted of your fire, for which she followeth you full busily. Right so the sea desireth naturally to follow her, as she that is goddess both in the sea and rivers more and less. Wherefore, Lord Phoebus, this is my request: do this miracle, or do mine hearte breast, that flow next at this opposition, which in the sign shall be of the lion, as praye her so great a flood to bring, that 5 fathom at least it oversprang the highest rock in Armoric Bretagne. And let this flood endure years a twain. Then certes to my lady may I say, holde your hest, the rockies be away. Lord Phoebus, this miracle do for me. Pray her she go no faster course than ye. I say this, pray your sister that she go no faster course than ye these yeares too. Then shall she be even at full alway, and spring flood lasteth both night and day. But she vouchesafe in such manere to grante me my sovereign lady dear. Pray her to sink every rock adown into her own dark region, under the ground where Pluto dwelleth in, or never more shall I my lady win. Thy temple in Delphos will I barefoot seek. Lord Phoebus, see the tears on my cheek, and on my pain have some compassion." And with that word in sorrow he fell down, and longer time he lay forth in a trance. His brother, which that knew of his penance, up caught him, and to bed he hath him brought. Despaired in this torment and this thought, let I this woeful creature lie. Choose he for me where'er he will live or die. Arviragus, with health and great honour, as he that was of chivalry the flower, is come home, and other worthy men. O blissful art thou now, thou Dorigen! Thou hast thy lusty husband in thine arms, the freshe knight, the worthy man of arms, that loveth thee as his own hearte life. nothing list him to be imaginative. If any wight had spoke while he was out to her of love, he had of that no doubt. He not intended to know such matter, but danced, jousted, and made merry cheer, and thus in love and bliss I let them dwell. And of the sick Aurelius will I tell, in languor and in torment furious. 2 year and more lay wretched Aurelius, ere any foot on earth he mighte gone, nor comfort in this time had he none, save of his brother, which that was a clerk. He knew of all this woe and all this work, for none other creature certain. Of this matter he durst no word sayn. Under his breast he bare it more secree than e'er did Pamphilus for Galatea. His breast was whole withoute for to seen, but in his heart aye was the arrow keen. And well ye know that of a sursurnure in surgery is perilous the cure. But men might touch the arrow or come thereby. His brother wept and wailed privily, till at the last him fell in remembrance that while he was at Orleans in France, as young a clerk as that be liquorous, to readen artes that be curious, seeken in every hulk and every herne, particular sciences for to learn, at him remembered that upon a day at Orleans in study a book he say of magic natural, which his fellow, that was that time a bachelor of law, all were he there to learn another craft, had privily upon his desk he laughed, which book spake much of operations, touching the 28 mansions that long unto the moon, and such folly as in our days is not worth a fly, for Holy Church's faith in our belief, us suffereth none elision to grief. And when this book was in his remembrance, anon for joy his heart began to dance, and to himself he said privily, my brother shall be worrished hastily. For I am sicker that there be sciences by which men make diverses appearances, such as these subtle treagetores play. For oft at feastes have I well heard say that treagetores within a halle large have made come in a water and a barge, and in the hall rowen up and down. Sometimes hath seemed come a grim lion, and sometimes flowers spring as in a mead, sometimes a vine and grapes white and red, sometimes a castle all of lime and stone. And when it them liked, voided it anon. Thus seemed it to every manne's sight. Now then conclude I thus, if that I might at Orleans some older fellow find, that hath these moone's mansions in mind, or other magic natural above, he should well make my brother have his love. For with an appearance a clerk may make to manne's sight, that all the rockes black of Breton were voided every one, and ships by the brink come and gone, and in such form endure a day or two. Then were my brother warished of his woe, then must she needs hold his behest, or else he shall name her at the least. Why should I longer tale of this? Unto his brother's bed he comen is, and such comfort he gave him for to gone to Orleans, that he upstarts anon, and on his way forthward then is he fair, in hope for to be list of his care. When they were come almost to that city, but if it were a 2 furlong or 3, a young clerk roaming by himself they met, which that in Latin thriftily them gret. And after that he said a wondrous thing. I know, quoth he, the cause of your coming. And ere they farther any foot he went, he told them all that was in their intent. The Breton clerk asked of fellows in which they hadde known in older doors, and he answered him that they deade were, for which he wept full often many a tear. Down off his horse Aurelius licht anon, and forth with this magician is begone home to his house, and made him well at ease. Them lacked no victual that might them please. So well arrayed a house as there was one, Aurelius in his life saw never none. He showed him, ere they went for to supper, forests, parks full of wilder deer, and there he saw hartes with their hornes high, the greatest that were ever seen with eye. He saw of them 100 slain with hounds, and some with arrows bleed of bitter wounds. He saw, when voided were the wilder deer, these falconers upon a fair riviere, that with their hawks have the heron slain. Then he saw knights jousting in a plain, and after this he did him such a pleasance, that he him showed his lady on a dance, in which himself danced as him thought. And when this master, that this magic wrought, saw it was time, he clapped his handes to, and farewell, all the revel is y go. And yet removed they never out of the house, while they saw all the sights marvellous. But in his study, where his bookes be, They satte still, and no wished but they three. To him his master called his squire, and said him thus: "May we go to supper? Almost an hour it is, I undertake, Since you bade our supper for to make. When that these worthy men wente with me Into my study, where my bookes be." "Sir," quoth his squire, "when it liketh you, It is all ready, though you will right now." "Go we then sup," quoth he, "as for the best. These amorous folk some time must have rest." At after supper fell they in treaty What summer should this master's guerdon be, To remove all the rockes of Bretagne, And eke from Gironde to the mouth of Seine. He made it strange, and swore, so God him save, Less than 1,000 pound he would not have, Nor gladly for that sum he would not gon. Aurelius with blissful heart anon Answered thus: "Fie on 1,000 pound! This wide world, which that men say is round, I would it give, if I were lord of it. This bargain is full driven, for we be knit. Ye shall be paid truly, by my troth. But look, for no negligence or sloth, Ye tarry us here no longer than tomorrow." "Nay," quoth the clerk, "have here my faith to borrow. To bed is gone Aurelius when him lest, And well nigh all that night had he his rest. What for his labour and his hope of bliss, His woeful heart of penance had a liss." Upon the morrow, when that it was day, Unto Bretagne they took the richte way, Aurelius and this magician beside, And be descended where they would abide. And this was, as the bookes me remember, The coldy frosty season of December. Phoebus waxed old, and hued like latoun, That in was his hote declination, Shone as the burned gold with streames bright, But now in Capricorn adown he light, Where as he shone full pale, I dare well sayn, The bitter frostes with the sleet and rain Destroyed have the green in every yard. Janus sits by the fire with double beard, And drinketh of his bugle horn the wine. Before him stands the brawn of tusked swine, And Noel crieth every lusty man. Aurelius, in all that ever he can, Did to his master cheer and reverence, And prayed him to do his diligence, To bring him out of his paines smart, Or with such a sword he would slit his heart. This subtle clerk such ruth had on this man, That night and day he sped him, that he can, To wait a time of his conclusion, That is to say, to make illusion, By such an appearance of jugglery (I know no termes of astrology), That she and every wight should ween and say That of Bretagne the rocks were away, Or else they were sunken under ground. So at the last he hath the time found To make his japes and his wretchedness Of such a superstitious cursedness. His tables toletaines forth he brought, Full well corrected, there that lacked nought, Neither his collect nor his expanse years, Neither his routes nor his other gears, As be his centres, and his arguments, And his proportional convenience. For his equations in everything, And by his 8 spheres in his working, He knew full well how far Alnath was shove From the heart of that fixed Aries above, That in the 9th sphere considered is. Full subtilly he calculed all this. When he had found his first dimension, He knew the remnant by proportion. He knew the rising of his moone well, And in whose face and term and every deal, And knew full well the moone's mansion, Accordant to his operation. And knew also his other observances, For such illusions and such méchances, As heathen folk used in thilke days, Which no longer made he delays. But through this magic, for a day or tway, It seemed all the rockes were away. Aurelius, which yet despaired is Where he shall have his love or fare amiss, Awaited night and day on this miracle. And when he knew that there was none obstacle That voided were these rockes every one, Down at his master's feet he fell anon, And said: "Aye, woeful, wretched Aurelius, Thank you, my lord and lady mine Venus, That me have holpen from my cares cold." And to the temple his way forth hath he told, Where as he knew he should his lady see. And when he saw his time, anon right he With dreadful heart and with full humble cheer Saluteth hath his sovereign lady dear. "My rightful lady," quoth this woeful man, "Whom I most dread, and love as I best can, And loathest were of all this world displease, Were't not that I for you have such disease, That I must die here at your foot anon. Nought would I tell how me is woe begone, but certes either must I die or plain, ye slay me guiltiless for every pain. But of my death, though that ye have no ruth, advise ye, ere that ye break your truth, repente you, for thilke God above, ere ye me slay, because I you love. For madam, well ye wot have what ye have hight, not that I challenge anything of right of you, my sovereign lady, but of grace. But in a garden yond in such a place, ye wot right well what ye behighted me, and in mine hand your troth plighted ye, to love me best. God wot ye said so, albeit that I unworthy am thereto. Madam, I speak it for the honour of you, more than to save my hearte's life right now. I have done so as ye commanded me, and if ye vouchersafe, ye may go see. Do as you list, have your behest in mind, for quick or dead, right there ye shall me find. In you hes all to do me live or die, but well I wot the rockes be away. He took his leave, and she astonished stood. In all her face was not one drop of blood. She never weened to have come in such a trap. Alas, quoth she, that ever this should hap, for weened I ne'er by possibility that such a monster or marvail might be. It is against the process of nature. And home she went, a sorrowful creature, for very fear unearthes may she go. She weeped, wailed all a day or two, and swooned, that it ruther was to see, but why it was, to no wish to tolde she, for out of town was gone avarice. But to herself she spake, and saide thus, with face pale and full sorrowful cheer, in her complaint, as ye shall after hear. Alas, quoth she, on thee, fortune I plain, that unware hast me wrapped in my chain, from which to scape wot I no succour, save only death, or else dishonour. One of these two behoveth me to choose, but natheless, yet had I liever lose my life than of my body have shame, or know myself a false, or lose my name, and with my doeth I may be quitty wis. Hath there not many a noble wife ere this, many a maiden slain herself, alas, rather than with her body do trespass? Yes, certes, lo, these stories bear witness. When 30 tyrants full of cursedness had slain Phidon in Athens at the feast, they commanded his daughters to arrest, and bring her before them in despite, all naked, to fulfil their foul delight. And in their father's blood they made them dance upon the pavement. God give them mischance, for which these woeful maidens full of dread, rather than that they would lose their maidenhead, they privily bestart into a well, and drowned themselves, as the bookes tell. They have misseen let inquire and seek of Lacedaemon 50 maidens eke, on which they woulde do their lechery. But there was none of all that company that was not slain, and with a glad intent chose rather for to die than to assent to be oppressed of her maidenhood. Why should I then to die and be in dread? Lo, eke the tyrant Aristoclides, that loved a maiden hight Stymphalides, when that her father slain was on a night, unto Diana's temple went she right, and hent the image in her handes too, from which image she would never go, no wished her handes might it off erase, till she was slain right in the selfe place. Now since that maidens had with such despite to be defouled with man's foul delight, well ought a wife rather herself to slay than be defouled, as it thinketh me. What shall I say of Hasdrubal's wife, that at Carthage bereft herself of life? For when she saw the Romans win the town, she took her children all and skipped down into the fire, and rather chose to die than any Roman did her villainy. Hath not Lucretia slain herself, alas, at Rome, when that she oppressed was of Tarquin, for her thought it was a shame to live, when she had lost her name? The 7 maidens of Milesie also have slain themselves for very dread and woe, rather than folk of Gaul should them oppress. More than 1,000 stories, as I guess, could I now tell as touching this matter. When Abradate was slain, his wife so dear herself slew, and let her blood to glide in Abradate's wounds deep and wide, and said, "My body at the least away there shall no wish defoul, if that I may." Why should I more examples hereof sayn, since that so many have themselves slain well rather than that they defouled be? I will conclude that it is bet for me to slay myself than to be defouled thus. I will be true unto avarice, or else slay myself in some manner. as did Demotione's daughter dear, because she woulde not defouled be. O Sedasus, it is full great pity to read how thy daughters died, alas, that slew themselves for such a manner cas. As great a pity was it of well more, the Theban maiden that for Nicanor herself slew, right for such manner woe, another Theban maiden did right so. For one of Macedon had her oppressed, she with her death her maidenhead redressed. What shall I say of Niceratus' wife, that for such case bereft herself of life? How true was eke to Alcibiades his love, that for to dien rather cheese than for to suffer his body unburied be? Lo, what a wife was Alceste, quoth she. What saith Homer of good Penelope? All Greece knoweth of her chastity. Pardie, of Laedamia is written thus, that when at Troy was slain Protesilaus, no longer would she live after this day. The same of noble Portia tell I may. Without her Brutus coulde she not live, to whom she did all whole her hearte give. The perfect wifehood of Artemisy honoured is throughout all Barbary. O Tutor Queen, thy wifely chastity to alle wives may a mirror be. Thus plained Dorigen a day or tway, proposing never that she would a day. But natheless upon the thirde night home came Arviragus, the worthy knight, and asked her why that she wept so sore. And she gan weepen ever longer more. Alas, quoth she, that ever I was born. Thus have I said, quoth she, thus have I sworn, and told him all, as ye have heard before. It needeth not rehearse it you no more. This husband with gladder cheer in friendly wise answered and said, as I shall you devise. Is there aught else, Dorigen, but this? Nay, nay, quoth she, God help me so as wis, this is too much, and it were Godde's will. Yea, wife, quoth he, let sleepe what is still. It may well parventure yet today ye shall your trothe holde by my fay. For God so wisly have mercy on me, I had well lever sticked for to be, for very love which I to ye have. But if ye should your trothe keep and save, truth is the highest thing that man may keep. But with that word he burst anon to weep, and said, I you forbid, on pain of death, that never, while you lasteth life or breath, to no wight tell ye this misadventure, and I ye best, I will my woe endure. Nor make no countenance of heaviness, that folk of you may deem harm or guess. And forth he called a squire and a maid. Go forth anon with Dorigen, he said, and bring her to such a place anon. They take their leave, and on their way they gon, but they not wiste why she thither went. He would no wish to tell her his intent. This squire, which that hight Aurelius on Dorigen that was so amorous, of a venture happened her to meet amid the town, right in the quickest street, as she was bound to go the way forthright toward the garden, there as she had hight. And he was to the garden ward also, for well he spied when she would go out of her house to any manner place. But thus they met, of adventure or grace, and he saluted her with glad intent, and asked of her wherewithal she went. And she answered, half as were she mad, unto the garden as my husband bade, for troth for to hold, alas, alas. Aurelius gan to wonder on this case, and in his heart had great compassion of her, and of her lamentation, and of Arviragus the worthy knight, that bade her hold that she had had a height. So loath him was his wife should break her truth, and in his heart he caught it of it great ruth, considering the best on every side, that from his lust yet were him liever abide. Then do so high a churlish wretchedness against franchise and alle gentleness. For which in fewer words he saide thus, Madam, say to your lord Arviragus, that since I see the greater gentleness of him, and eke I see well your distress, that him will ever have shame, and that were ruth, that ye to make me should break thus your truth. I had well lever I to suffer woe, than to depart the love betwixt you two. I you release, madam, into your hond, quit every surement and every bond that ye have made to me as here beforn, since thilke time that ye were born. Have here my truth, I shall you ne'er reprieve of no behest, and here I take my leave as of the truest and the beste life that ever yet I knew in all my life. But every wife beware of her bewest. On Dorigen remember at the least, thus can a squire do a gentle deed as well as can a knight without a dread. She thanked him upon her knees bare, And home unto her husband is she fare, And told him all, as ye have heard said, And truste me, he was so well apaid, That it were impossible me to write. Why should I longer of this case indite? Arviragus and Dorigen his wife In sovereign blisse leade forth their life, Ne'er after was there anger them between. He cherished her as though she were a queen, And she was to him true for evermore. Of these two folk ye get of me no more. Aurelius, that as his cost had all forlorn, Cursed the time that ever he was born. Alas, quoth he, alas that I be hight Of pured gold 1,000 pound of white To this philosopher. How shall I do? I see no more, but I am fordue. Mine heritage must I needes sell, And be a beggar. Here I will not dwell, And shamen all my kindred in this place, But I of him may get a better grace. But natheless I will of him assay, And certain days year by year to pay, And thank him of his greate courtesy. My troth will I keep, I will not he. With hearte sore he went unto his coffer, And brought a gold unto this philosopher, The value of 500 pound, I guess, And him beseeched of his gentleness To grant him days of the remenant, And said, Master, I dare well make avaunt, I failed never of my truth as yet, For sickerly my debt shall be quit Towards ye, howso that ere I fare, To go a begging in my kirtle bare. But would ye vouchsafe upon surety 2 year or 3 for to respite me, Then were I well, for else I must sell Mine heritage, there is no more to tell. This philosopher soberly answered, And saide thus, when he these wordes heard: Have I not holden covenant to thee? Yes, certes, well and truly, quoth he. Hast thou not had thy lady as thee liked? No, no, quoth he, and sorrowfully siked. What was the cause? Tell me if you can. Aurelius his tale anon began, And told him all as ye have heard before. It needeth not to you rehearse it more. He said, Arviragus of gentleness Had lever die in sorrow and distress, Than that his wife were of her trothe false. The sorrow of Dorigen he told him else, How loth her was to be a wicked wife, And that she had lever had lost that day her life, And that her troth she swore through innocence, She ne'er erst had speaked of apparence. That made her have of her so great pity, And right as freely as her sent her to me, And freely sent I her to him again. That is all sum and sum, there is no more to sayn. The philosopher answered, Leave, brother, ever each of you did gently to the other. Thou art a squire, and he is a knight, But God forbid, for all his blissful might. But if a clerk could do a gentle deed As well as any of you, it is no dread. Sir, I release thee thy 1,000 pound, As thou right now were crept out of the ground, For never ere thou haddest knowen me. For, sir, I will not take a penny of thee, For all my craft, nor nought of my travail. Thou hast y paid well for my vitail. It is enough, and farewell, have good day. And took his horse, and forth he went his way. Lordings, this question would I ask enow, Which has the most free as thinketh you? Now tell me, ere that ye farther wend. I can no more, my tale is at an end. End of the Franklin's Tale. Read in Nottingham, England, on the 16th of July 2006. www.alexfoster.me.uk.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. This reading by Fox in the Stars of ShiningHalf.com, May 2006. The Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. Edited by D. Laing Purves. This reading is based on the book The Canterbury Tales and Other Poems. The original text contains poems by Chaucer and a lot of notes and explanations by the editor. To view these, please click on the Gutenberg eText link on the LibriVox catalog page of The Canterbury Tales. The Doctor's Tale. The Prologue. Yea, let that passe, quoth our host, as now. Sir Doctor of Physic, I pray you, tell us a tale of some honest mattere. It shall be done, if that ye will it hear. said this doctor, and his tale gan anon. Now, good men, quoth he, hearken every one. The Tale. There was, as telleth Titus Livius, a knight that called was Virginius, fulfilled of honour and worthiness, and strong of friendes, and of great richess. This knight one daughter hadde by his wife, no children had he more in all his life. Fair was this maid in excellent beauty, aboven every wight that man may see. For nature had with sovran diligence y formed her in so great excellence, as though she woulde say, Lo, I, nature, thus can I form and paint a creature. When that me list, who can me counterfeit? Pygmalion, not though he I forge and beat, or grave or painte, for I dare well sayn, Apelles, Zeuxis, shoulde work in vain, either to grave, or paint, or forge, or beat, if they presumed me to counterfeit. For he that is the former principal hath made me his vicar general, to form and painten earthly creatures, right as me list, and all thing in my cure is, under the moone that may wane and wax, and for my work right nothing will I ax. My lord and I be full of one accord. I made her to the worship of my lord. So did I all mine other creatures, what colour that they have, or what figures. Thus seemeth me that nature woulde say. This maiden was of age 12 year and tway, in which that nature hadde such delight, for right as she can paint a lily white, and red a rose, right with such painture she painted had this noble creature, ere she was born, upon her limbes free, whereas by right such colours shoulde be. And Phoebus dyed had her tresses great, like to the streames of his burned heat. And if that excellent was her beauty, 1,000-fold more virtuous was she. In her there lacked no condition, that is to praise as by discretion. As well in ghost as body chaste was she, for which she flowered in virginity, with all humility and abstinence, with alle temperance and patience, with measure eke of bearing and array. Discreet was she in answering alway, though she were wise as Pallas, dare I sayn, her facond eke full womanly and plain. No counterfeited termes hadde she, to seeme wise, but after her degree she spake, and all her wordes more and less, sounding in virtue and in gentleness. Shamefast she was in maiden's shamefastness, constant in heart and ever in business, to drive her out of idle sluggardy. Bacchus had of her mouth right no mastery, for wine and slothe do Venus increase, as men in fire will casten oil and grease. And of her owen virtue unconstrained, she had herself full often sick y feigned, for that she woulde flee the company, where likely was to treaten of folly, as is at feasts, at revels, and at dances, that be occasions of dalliances. Such thinges make children for to be too soone ripe and bold, as men may see, which is full perilous, and hath been yore, for all too soone may she learn a lore of boldeness, when that she is a wife. And ye mistresses in your olde life, that lordes daughters have in governance, take not of my wordes displeasance. Think that ye be set in governings of lordes daughters only for two things, either for ye have kept your honesty, or else for ye have fallen in frailty, and knowe well enough the olde dance, and have forsaken fully such mischance for evermore. Therefore, for Christe's sake, to teach them virtue, look that ye not slake. A thief of venison that hath forlaft his ligrousness and all his olde craft, can keep a forest best of any man. Now keep them well, for if ye will, ye can. Look well that ye unto no vice assent, lest ye be damned for your wick intent. For whoso doth a traitor is certain, and take a keep of that I shall you sayn. Of alle treasons sovereign pestilence is when a wight betrayeth innocence. Ye fathers and ye mothers eke also, though have ye children, be it one or mo', yours is the charge of all their surveillance, while that they be under your governance. Beware that by example of your living, or by your negligence in chastising, that they not perish, for I dare well say, if that they do, ye shall it dear abay. Under a shepherd soft and negligent, the wolf hath many a sheep and lamb to rent. Suffice this example now as here, for I must turn again to my mattere. This maid, of which I tell my tale express, she kept herself, she needed no mistress. For in her living maidens mighte read, as in a book, every good word and deed that longeth to a maiden virtuous. She was so prudent and so bounteous, for which the fame outsprang on every side, both of her beauty and her bounte wide, that through the land they praised her each one, that loved virtue, save envy alone, that sorry is of other manne's weal, and glad is of his sorrow and unheal. The doctor maketh this description. This maiden on a day went in the town, toward a temple with her mother dear, as is of younge maidens the maniere. Now there was then a justice in that town, that governor was of that region. And so befell, this judge his eyen cast upon this maid, avising her full fast, as she came forth by where this judge stood. Anon his hearte changed and his mood. So was he caught with beauty of this maid, and to himself full privily he said, this maiden shall be mine for any man. Anon the fiend into his hearte ran, and taught him suddenly that he by sleight this maiden to his purpose winne might. For certes by no force, nor by no meed, him thought he was not able for to speed. For she was strong of friendes, and eke she confirmed was in such sovran bounty, that well he wist he might her never win, as for to make her with her body sin. For which with great deliberation he sent after a clerk was in the town, the which he knew for subtle and for bold. This judge unto this clerk his tale told, in secret wise, and made him to assure he shoulde tell it to no creature, and if he did, he shoulde lose his head. And when assented was this cursed read, glad was the judge, and made him greate cheer, and gave him giftes precious and dear. When shapen was all their conspiracy, from point to point how that his lechery performed shoulde be full subtilly, as ye shall hear it after openly, home went this clerk that highte Claudius. This false judge that highte Appius, so was his name, for it is no fable, but knowen for a storial thing notable. The sentence of it sooth is out of doubt. This false judge went now fast about, to hasten his delight all that he may. And so befell, soon after on a day, this false judge, as telleth us the story, as he was wont, sat in his consistory, and gave his doomes upon sundry case. This false clerk came forth a full great pace, and saide, Lord, if that it be your will, as do me right upon this piteous bill, in which I plain upon Virginius, and if that he will say it is not thus, I will it prove and find a good witness. That sooth is what my billow will express. The judge answered, of this in his absence I may not give definitive sentence. Let do him call, and I will gladly hear. Thou shalt have all aright, and no wrong here. Virginius came to weet the judge's will, and right anon was read this cursed bill. The sentence of it was, as ye shall hear. To you, my lord, Sir Appius, so clear, sheweth your poore servant Claudius, how that a knight called Virginius, against the law, against all equity, holdeth express against the will of me, my servant, which that is my thrall by right, which from my house was stolen on a night, while that she was full young. I will it preve by witness, lord, so that it you not grieve. She is his daughter not, whatso he say. Therefore to you, my lord the judge, I pray, yield me my thrall, if that it be your will. Lo, this was all the sentence of the bill. Virginius gan upon the clerk behold, but hastily, ere he his tale told, and would have proved it as should a knight, and eke by witnessing of many a wight, that all was false that said his adversary, this cursed judge would no longer tarry, nor hear a word more of Virginius, but gave his judgement, and saide thus: I deem anon this clerk his servant have, thou shalt no longer in thy house her save. Go, bring her forth, and put her in our ward. The clerk shall have his thrall, thus I award. And when this worthy knight, Virginius, through sentence of this Justice Appius, muste by force his deare daughter give unto the judge in lechery to live, he went him home, and sat him in his hall, and let anon his deare daughter call. And with a face as dead as ashes cold, upon her humble face he gan behold, with father's pity sticking through his heart, all would he from his purpose not convert. Daughter, quoth he, Virginia by name, there be two wayes, either death or shame, that thou must suffer. Alas that I was bore, for never thou deservedest wherefore to dien with a sword or with a knife. O deare daughter, ender of my life, whom I have fostered up with such pleasance, that thou were ne'er out of my remembrance. O daughter, which that art my laste woe, and in this life my laste joy also. O gem of chastity, in patience, take thou thy death, for this is my sentence. For love and not for hate thou must be dead. My piteous hand must smiten off thine head. Alas, that ever Appius thee say, thus hath he falsely judged thee to-day. And told her all the case, as ye before have heard, it needeth not to tell it more. "O mercy, deare father," quoth the maid, and with that word she both her armes laid about his neck, as she was wont to do. The teares burst out of her eyen too, and said, "O goode father, shall I die? Is there no grace? Is there no remedy?" "No, certes, deare daughter mine," quoth he. "Then give me leisure, father mine," quoth she, "My death for to complain a little space. For pardie Jephthah gave his daughter grace For to complain ere he her slew, alas! And God it wot, nothing was her trespass, But for she ran her father first to see, To welcome him with great solemnity. And with that word she fell a swoon anon, And after, when her swooning was y gone, She rose up, and unto her father said, "Blessed be God, that I shall die a maid. Give me my death, ere that I have shame. Do with your child your will, in Godde's name." And with that word she prayed him full oft, That with his sword he woulde smite her soft. And with that word a swoon again she fell. Her father with full sorrowful heart and fell, Her head off smote, and by the top it hent, And to the judge he went it to present, As he sat yet in doom in consistory. And when the judge it saw, as saith the story, He bade to take him and to hang him fast, But right anon 1,000 people in thrast, To save the knight, for ruth and for pity, For knowen was the false iniquity. The people anon had suspect in this thing, By manner of the clerkes challenging, That it was by th' assent of Appius. They wiste well that he was lecherous. For which unto this Appius they gon, And cast him in a prison right anon, Whereas he slew himself, and Claudius, That servant was unto this Appius, Was doomed for to hang upon a tree. but that Virginius of his pity so prayed for him that he was exiled, and elles certes had he been beguiled. The remanent were hanged more and less, that were consenting to this cursedness. Here man may see how sin hath his merite. Beware, for no man knows how God will smite. In no degree, nor in which manner wise, the worm of conscience may agrise of wicked life, though it so privy be, that no man knows thereof save God and he. For be he lewed man, or elles leard, he knows not how soon he shall be afeard. Therefore I rede you this counsel take, forsake a sin, ere sinne you forsake. End of the Doctor's Tale.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. This recording is by David Barnes. The Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer, edited by D. Laing Purves. This reading is based on the book The Canterbury Tales and Other Poems. The original text contains poems by Chaucer and a lot of notes and explanations by the editor. To view these, please click on the Gutenberg eText link on the LibriVox catalogue page of the Canterbury Tales. The Pardoner's Tale. The Prologue. Our host gan to swear as he were wood. "Harrow," quoth he, "by nails and by blood this was a cursed thief, a false justice. As shameful death as heart can devise come to these judges and their advocars. Algate this seely maid is slain, alas! Alas, too dear bought she her beauty. Wherefore I say, that all day man may see that gifts of fortune and of nature be cause of death to many a creature. Her beauty was her death, I dare well sayn. Alas, so piteously as she was slain. Of both gifts that I speak of now, men have full often more harm than prow. But truly, mine own master dear, this was a piteous tale for to hear. But natheless pass over, 'tis no force. I pray to God to save thy gentle course, and eke thine urinals and thy Jordans, thine Hippocras, and eke thy Galliens, and every boist full of thy lectury. God bless them, and Our Lady Saint Mary. So may I there thou art a proper man, and like a prelate by Saint Ronian. Said I not well? Can I not speak in term? But well I wot thou dost mine heart to erm, that I have almost caught a cardiacal, by corpus domini, but I have triacal, or else a draught of moist and corny ale. Or but I hear anon a merry tale. Mine heart is brost for pity of this maid. Thou, Bel-Ami, thou pardoner, he said, tell us some mirth of japes right anon. It shall be done, quoth he, by Saint Ronion. But first, quoth he, here at this ale stake, I will both drink and biten on a cake. But right anon the gentles gan to cry, Nay, let him tell us of no ribaldry. Tell us some moral thing, that we may lear some wit, and then will we gladly hear. I grant y wis, quoth he, but I must think upon some honest thing while that I drink. The Tale. Lordings, quoth he, in church when I preach, I pain me to have an hautaine speech, and ring it out as loud as doth a bell, for I know all by rote that I tell. My theme is always one, and ever was, radix malorum est cupiditas. First I pronounce whence that I come, and then my bulls show I all and some. Our liege lord's seal on my patent, that show I first, my body to warrant. That no man so hardy, priest nor clerk, me to disturb of Christ's holy work. And after that then tell I forth my tales. Bulls of popes and of cardinales, of patriarchs and of bishops I shew, and in Latin I speak a word as few, to savour with my predication, and for to stir men to devotion. Then show I forth my long crystal stones, y-crammed full of clouts and of bones. Relics they be, as ween they each one. Then have I in latoon a shoulder bone, which that was of a holy Jew's sheep. Good men, say I, take of my wordes keep. If that this bone be washed in any well, if cow or calf or sheep or ox swell, that any worm hath eat or worm is stung, take water of that well and wash his tongue, and it is whole anon. And farthermore of pox and of scab and every sore shall every sheep be whole, that of this well drinketh a draught. Take keep of that I tell. If that the goodman that the beasts oweth will every week, ere that the cock him croweth, fasting y drinken of this well a draught, as thilke holy Jew our elders taught, his beasts and his store shall multiply. And sirs, also it healeth jealousy. For though a man be fallen in jealous rage, let make with this water his pottage, and never shall he more his wife mistrist, though he the sooth of her default wist. All had she taken priests 2 or 3. Here is a mittain eke that we may see. He that his hand will put in this mittain, he shall have multiplying of his grain, when he hath sown, be it wheat or oats, so that he offer pence or else groats. And men and women, one thing warn I you, if any wight be in this church now, that hath done sin horrible, so that he dare not for shame of it shriven be, or any woman, be she young or old, that hath y-made her husband cuckold, such folk shall have no power nor no grace to offer to my relics in this place. And whoso findeth him out of such blame, he will come up and offer in God's name, and I assoil him by the authority which that by bull y granted was to me. By this gord have I won year by year 100 marks since I was pardoneer. I stand like a clerk in my pulpit, and when the lewed people down is set, I preach so as ye have heard before, and tell them 100 japes more. Then pain I me to stretch forth my neck, and east and west upon the people I beck, as doth a dove sitting on a burn. My hands and my tongue go so yearn, that it is joy to see my business. Of avarice and of such cursedness is all my preaching, for to make them free to give their pence, and namely unto me. For mine intent is not but for to win, and nothing for correction of sin. I reck never, when that they be buried, though that their souls go a blackberried. For certes many a predication cometh oft time of evil intention, some for pleasance of folk and flattery, to be advanced by hypocrisy, and some for vainglory, and some for hate. For when I dare not otherwise debate, then will I sting him with my tongue smart in preaching, so that he shall not astart to be defamed falsely, if that he hath trespassed to my brethren or to me. For though I tell not his proper name, men shall well know that it is the same by signs and by other circumstances. Thus quite I folk that do us displeasances. Thus spit I out my venom, under hue of holiness, to seem holy and true. But shortly mine intent I will devise, I preach of nothing but of covetise. Therefore my theme is set, and ever was, radix malorum est cupiditas. Thus can I preach against the same vice which that I use, and that is avarice. But though myself be guilty in that sin, yet can I maken other folk to twin from avarice, and sore them repent. But that is not my principal intent. I preach nothing but for covetise. Of this matter it ought enough suffice. Then tell I them examples many a one of old stories long time gone, for lewed people love tales old, such things can they well report and hold. What, trow ye, that whiles I may preach and win gold and silver for I teach, that I will live in povert' wilfully? Nay, nay, I thought it never truly. For I will preach and beg in sundry lands. I will not do no labour with mine hands, nor make baskets for to live thereby, because I will not beggen idle lie. I will none of the apostles counterfeit. I will have money, wool, and cheese, and wheat, all were it given of the poorest page, or of the poorest widow in a village. All should her children sterve for famine. Nay, I will drink the liquor of the vine, and have a jolly wench in every town. But hearken, lordlings, in conclusion, your liking is, that I shall tell a tale, now I have drunk a draught of corny ale. By God, I hope I shall you tell a thing that shall by reason be to your liking. For though myself be a full vicious man, a moral tale yet I you tell can, which I am wont to preach for to win. Now hold your peace, my tale I will begin. In Flanders whilom was a company of young folks that haunted folly, as riot, hazard, stews, and taverns, whereas with lutes, harps, and gitterns they dance and play at dice both day and night, and eat also, and drink over their might, through which they do the devil's sacrifice within the devil's temple in cursed wise, by superfluity abominable. Their oaths be so great and so damnable, that it is grisly for to hear them swear. Our blissful Lord's body they to tear. Them thought the Jews rent him not enough, and each of them at others' sin laugh. And right anon in come tombsteries, fetis and small and young fruitesteries, singers with harps, bawds, waferers, which be the very devil's officers, to kindle and blow the fire of lechery that is annexed unto gluttony. The Holy Writ take I to my witness, that luxury is in wine and drunkenness. Lo, how that drunken Lot unkindly lay by his daughters too unwittingly. So drunk he was, he knew not what he wrought. Herodes, who so well the stories sought, when he of wine replete was at his feast, right at his own table gave his hest to slay the Baptist John full guiltless. Seneca saith a good word doubtless. He saith he can no difference find betwixt a man that is out of his mind and a man which that is drunkaloo, but that woodness, if fallen in a shrew, persevereth longer than drunkenness. O gluttony, full of all cursedness, O cause first of our confusion, original of our damnation, till Christ had bought us with his blood again. Look, how dear, shortly for to sayn, abought was first this cursed villainy, corrupt was all this world for gluttony. Adam our father and his wife also, from paradise to labour and to woe, were driven for that vice. It is no dread. For while that Adam fasted, as I read, he was in paradise, and when that he ate of the fruit defended of the tree, anon he was cast out to woe and pain. O gluttony, well ought us on thee plain. O wist a man how many maladies follow of excess and of gluttonies, he would be the more measurable on his diet, sitting at his table. Alas, the short throat, the tender mouth maketh that east and west and north and south, in earth, in air, in water men do swink, to get a glutton dainty meat and drink. Of this matter, O Paul, well canst thou treat. Meat unto womb, and womb eke unto meat, shall God destroy both, as Paulus saith. Alas, a foul thing is it, by my faith, to say this word, and fouler is the deed, when man so drinketh of the white and red, that of his throat he maketh his privy, through thilke cursed superfluity. The apostle saith, weeping full piteously, there walk many, of which you told have I say it now weeping with piteous voice, that they be enemies of Christ's cross, of which the end is death, womb is their God. O womb, O belly, stinking is thy cod, full filled of dung and of corruption, as either end of thee foul is the sound. How great labour and cost is thee to find these cooks, how they stamp and strain and grind, and turn substance into accident, to fulfil all thy liquorous talent. Out of the hard bones knock they the marrow, for they cast naught away that may go through the gullet soft and swoot. Of spicery and leaves, of bark and root, shall be his sauce y maked by delight, to make him have a newer appetite. But, certes, he that haunteth such delices is dead while that he liveth in those vices. A lecherous thing is wine, and drunkenness is full of striving and of wretchedness. O drunken man, disfigured is thy face, sour is thy breath, foul art thou to embrace, and through thy drunken nose soundeth the sound, as though thou saddest, aye, Samsoun, Samsoun, and yet, God wot, Samson drank never wine. Thou fallest as it were a sticked swine, thy tongue is lost, and all thine honest cure. For drunkenness is very sepulture of man's wit and his discretion. In whom that drink hath domination, he can no counsel keep, it is no dread. Now keep you from the white and from the red, and namely from the white wine of Lepe, that it is to sell in Fish Street and in cheap. This wine of Spain creepeth subtilly, in other wines growing fast by, of which there riseth such fumosity, that when a man hath drunken draughts 3, he weeneth that he be at home in cheap, he is in Spain, right at the town of Lepe, not at the Rochelle, not at Bordeaux town, and then will he say, Samsoun, Samsoun. But hearken, lordings, one word I you pray, that all the sovereign acts, dare I say, of victories in the Old Testament, through very God that is omnipotent, were done in abstinence and in prayer. Look in the Bible, and there you may it lear. Look, Attila, the great conqueror, died in his sleep, with shame and dishonour, bleeding aye at his nose in drunkenness. A captain should aye live in soberness, and o'er all this advise you right well what was commanded unto Lemuel. Not Samuel, but Lemuel, say I. Read the Bible, and find it expressly, of wine giving to them that have justice, no more of this, for it may well suffice. And, now that I have spoke of gluttony, now will I you defend hazardry. Hazard is very mother of leasings, and of deceit and cursed forswearings, blaspheme of Christ, manslaughter and waste also of chattel and of time. And furthermore it is reprieve and contraire of honour, for to be held a common hazarder. And ever the higher he is of estate, the more he is holden desolate. If that a prince use hazardry in all governance and policy, he is, as by common opinion, he hold the less in reputation. Chilon, that was a wise ambassador, was sent to Corinth for full great honour from Lacedaemon to make alliance, and when he came it happened to him by chance that all the greatest that were of that land, y playing at hazard he them found. For which, as soon as that it might be, he stole him home again to his country, and said there, I will not lose my name, nor will I take on me so great defame, you to ally unto no hazardors. Send some other wise ambassadors, for, by my troth, me were lever die, than I should you to hazardors ally. For ye that be so glorious in honours shall not ally you to no hazardors, as by my will, nor as by my treaty. This wise philosopher thus said he. Look eke how to the King Demetrius, the king of Parthes, as the book saith us, sent him a pair of dice of gold in scorn, for he had used hazard there beforn, for which he held his glory and renown at no value or reputation. Lords may find an other manner play, honest enough to drive the day away. Now will I speak of oaths false and great, a word or two, as old books treat. Great swearing is a thing abominable, and false swearing is more reprovable. The high God forbade swearing at all, witness on Matthew, but in special of swearing saith the holy Jeremiah, Thou thalt swear sooth thine oaths and not lie, and swear in doom and eke in righteousness, but idle swearing is accursedness. Behold and see, there in the first table of high God's hest is honourable, how that the second best of him is this, take not my name in idle or amiss. Lo, rather he forbiddeth such swearing, than homicide or many a cursed thing. I say that as by order thus it standeth, this knoweth he that his hests understandeth, how that the second hest of God is that. And farthermore, I will tell thee all plat, that vengeance shall not part from this house that of his oaths is outrageous. By God's precious heart, and by his nails, and by the blood of Christ that is in Hales, 7 is my chance, and thine is sink and tray. By God's arms, if thou falsely play, this dagger shall throughout thine heart go. This fruit comes of the bitched bones too, for swearing, ire, falseness, and homicide. Now, for the love of Christ that for us died, leave your oaths both great and smale, but, sirs, now will I ell you forth my tale. These rioters 3 of which I tell, long erst than prime rang of any bell, were set them in a tavern for to drink. And as they sat, they heard a bell clink before a corpse was carried to the grave. That one of them gan call to his knave, Go bet, quoth he, and ask readily what corpse is this that passeth here forth by, and look that thou report his name well. Sir, quoth the boy, it needeth never a deal. It was me told ere ye came here 2 hours. He was, pardie, an old fellow of yours. And suddenly he was slain to-night, for drunk as he sat on his bench upright, there came a privy thief men clepe death, that in this country all the people slayth. And with his spear he smote his heart in two, and went his way without words more. He hath 1,000 slain this pestilence, and, master, ere you come in his presence, methinketh that it were full necessary for to beware of such an adversary, be ready for to meet him evermore. Thus taught me my dame, I say no more. By Saint Mary, said the tavernier, the child saith sooth, for he hath slain this year, hence o'er a mile within a great village, both men and woman, child and hind and page. I trow his habitation be there. To be advised, great wisdom it were, ere that he did a man a dishonour. Yea, God's arms, quoth this rioter, is it such peril with him for to meet? I shall him seek by stile and eke by street. I make a vow by God's dying bones. Hearken, fellows, we three be all ones. Let each of us hold up his hand to other, and each of us become the other's brother. And we will slay this false traitor Death. He shall be slain, he that so many slayeth, by God's dignity ere it be night. Together have these three their troth plight, to live and die each one of them for other, as though he were his own sworn brother. And up they start all drunken in this rage, and forth they go towards that village of which the taverner had spoken before. And many a grisly oath have they sworn, and Christ's blessed body they to rent. Death shall be dead, if that we may him hent. When they had gone not fully half a mile, right as they would have trodden o'er a stile, an old man and a poor with them met. This old man full meekly them gret, and said thus, "Now, lords, God ye see." The proudest of these rioters three answered again, "What, churl, with sorry grace, why art thou all forwrapped save thy face? Why livest thou so long in so great age?" This old man gan look on his visage, and said thus, "For that I cannot find a man, though that I walked unto Ind, neither in city nor in no village go, that would change his youth for mine age. And therefore must I have mine age still, as long time as it is God's will. And death, alas, he will not have my life. Thus walk I like a restless caitife, and on the ground, which is my mother's gate, I knock with my staff early and late, and say to her, "Leave, mother, let me in. Lo, how I wane flesh and blood and skin. Alas, when shall my bones be at rest? Mother, with you I would change my chest, that in my chamber long time hath be, yea, for an hairy clout to wrap in me. But yet to me she will not do that grace, for which full pale and welked is my face. But, sirs, to you it is no courtesy to speak unto an old man villainy, but he trespass in word or else in deed. In Holy Writ ye may yourselves read, against an old man whore upon his head you should arise. Therefore I you read, ne'er do unto an old man no harm now, no more than you would a man did you in age, if that you may so long abide. And God be with you, whether you go or ride. I must go thither, as I have to go." "Nay, old churl, by God thou shalt not so," said this other hazarder anon. "Thou partest not so lightly, by Saint John. Thou spakest right now of that traitor Death, that in this country all our friends slayeth. Have here my troth, as thou art his espy. Tell where he is, or thou shalt it abye, by God and by holy sacrament. For soothly thou art one of his assent, to slay us young folk, thou false thief." "Now, sirs," quoth he, "if it be you so lief to find Death, turn up this crooked way, for in that grove I left him, by my fay, under a tree, and there he will abide. Nor for your boast he will him nothing hide. See that oak? Right there ye shall him find. God save you that bought again mankind, and ye amend." Thus said this old man, and ever each of those rioters ran, till they came to the tree, and there they found of florins fine, of gold y-coined round, well nigh 7 bushels as them thought. No longer as then after death they sought, but each of them so glad was of the sight, for that the florins were so fair and bright, that down they sat them by the precious board. The youngest of them spoke the first word. "Brethren," quoth he, "take keep what I shall say. My wit is great, though that I board and play. This treasure hath fortune unto us given, in mirth and jollity our life to liven. And lightly as it comes, so will we spend. Hey, God's precious dignity, who wend to day that we should have so fair a grace? But might this gold he carried from this place home to my house, and else unto yours, for well I wot that all this gold is ours, then were we in high felicity. But truly by day it may not be. Men would say that we were thieves strong, and for our own treasure do us hong. This treasure must carried be by night, as wisely and as slyly as it might. Wherefore I read that cut among us all we draw, and let us see where the cut will fall. And he that hath the cut, with heart blithe shall run unto town, and that full swathe, and bring us bread and wine full privily. And two of us shall keep subtly this treasure well. And if he will not tarry, when it is night, we will this treasure carry by one assent, whereas us thinketh best. Then one of them the cut brought in his fist, and bade them draw, and look where it would fall. And it fell on the youngest of them all, and forth towards the town he went anon. And all so soon as that he was y-gone, the one of them spake thus unto the other: Thou knowest well that thou art my sworn brother. Thy profit will I tell thee right anon. Thou knowest well that our fellow is gone, and here is gold, and that full great plenty, that shall departed he among us three. But natheless, if I could shape it so that it departed were among us two, had I not done a friend's turn to thee? The other answered, I not how that may be. He knows well that the gold is with us tway. How shall we do? What shall we to him say? Shall it be counsel? Said the first shrew, and I shall tell to thee in wordes few what we shall do, and bring it well about. I grant, quoth the other, out of doubt, that by my truth I will thee not bewray. Now, quoth the first, thou know'st well we be tway, and two of us shall stronger be than one. Look, when that he is set, thou right anon arise, as though thou wouldest with him play, and I shall rive him through the sides tway, while that thou strugglest with him as in game, and with thy dagger look thou do the same. And then shall all this gold departed be, my dear friend, betwixt thee and me. Then may we both our lusts all fulfil, and play at dice right at our own will. And thus accorded, by these shrews tway, to slay the third, as ye have heard me say. The youngest, which that went to the town, full oft in heart he rolled up and down the beauty of these florins new and bright. O Lord, quoth he, if so were that I might have all this treasure to myself alone, there is no man that lives under the throne of God that should have so merry as I. And at the last the fiend, our enemy, put in his thoughts that he should poison buy, with which he might slay his fellows twy. For why the fiend found him in such living, that he had leave to sorrow him to bring. For this was utterly his full intent, to slay them both, and never to repent. And forth he went, no longer would he tarry, into the town to an apothecary, and prayed him that he him would sell some poison that he might his rats quell. And eke there was a polecat in his haw, that as he said his epons had his slaw. And fain he would him wreak, if that he might, of vermin that destroyed him by night. The apothecary answered, thou shalt have a thing as wisly God my soul save. In all this world there is no creature that eat or drink hath of this confecture, not but the mountains of a corn of wheat, that he shall not his life anon forleet. Yea, sterve he shall, and that in less while than thou wilt go apace nought but a mile. This poison is so strong and violent. This cursed man hath in his hand y hent this poison in a box, and swift he ran, into the next street unto a man, and borrowed of him large bottles 3. And in the 2 the poison poured he, the 3rd he kept clean for his own drink. For all the night he shope him for to swink in carrying off the gold out of that place. And when this rioter with sorry grace had filled with wine his great bottles 3, to his fellows again repaired he. What needeth it thereof to sermon more? For right as they had cast his death before, right so they have him slain, and that anon. And when that this was done, thus spake the one, Now let us sit and drink and make us merry, and afterward we will his body bury. And with that word it happened him parcas to take the bottle where the poison was, and drank, and gave his fellow drink also, for which anon they sterved both the 2. But certes I suppose that Avicenne wrote never in no canon nor no fen more wondrous signs of empoisoning than had these wretches 2 ere their ending. Thus ended be these homicides 2, and eke the false empoisoner also. O cursed sin, full of all cursedness! O traitorous homicide! O wickedness! O gluttony, luxury, and hazardry! Thou blasphemer of Christ with villainy, and oaths great of usage and of pride! Alas, mankind, how may it betide that to thy Creator, which that thee wrought, and with his precious heart-blood thee bought, that art so false and so unkind, alas! Now, good men, God forgive you your trespass, and wear you from the sin of avarice. Mine holy pardon may you all warice, so that you offer nobles or sterlings, or else silver brooches, spoons, or rings. Bow your head under this holy bull. Come up, ye wives, and offer of your will. Your names I enter in my roll anon. Into the bliss of heaven shall ye gon. I you assoil by mine high power, you that will offer as clean and eke as clear as ye were born. Lo, sires, thus I preach, and Jesus, that is your soul's leech, so grant you his pardon to receive. For that is best, I will not deceive. But, sirs, one word forgot I in my tale. I have relics and pardon in my mail, as fair as any man in Engleland, which were me given by the Pope's hand. If any of you will a devotion offer, and have mine absolution, come forth anon, and kneel here adown, and meekly receive my pardon. Or else take pardon as ye wend, all new and fresh at every town's end, so that ye offer always new and new, nobles or pence, which that be good and true. 'Tis an honour to evereach that is here, that ye have a sufficient pardoneer t'assoil you in country as ye ride, for adventures which that may betide, paraventure there may fall one or two down of his horse, and break his neck in two. Look what a surety it is to you all, that I am in your fellowship if all, that my assoil ye both more and lass, when that the soul shall from the body pass. I read that our host shall begin, for he is most enveloped in sin. Come forth, Sir Host, and offer first anon, and thou shalt kiss the relics every one, yea, for a groat, unbuckle anon thy purse. Nay, nay, quoth he, then have I Christ's curse. Let be, quoth he, it shall not be, so that thou wouldest make me kiss thine old breech, and swear it were a relic of a saint. though it were with thy fundament depaint. But by the cross which that Saint Helen fand, I would I had thy coilons in my hand, instead of relics or of sanctuary. Let cut them off, and I will thee help them carry. They shall be shrined in a hog's turd. The pardoner answered not one word, so wroth he was, no word would he say. Now, quoth our host, I will no longer play with thee, nor with none other angry man. But right anon the worthy knight began, when that he saw that all the people laugh. No more of this, for it is right enough. Sir Pardoner, be merry and glad of cheer, and ye, sir hosts, that be to me so dear, I pray you that ye kiss the Pardoner, and Pardoner, I pray thee draw thee near. And as we diddle, let us laugh and play. Anon they kissed, and rode forth their way. End of the Pardoner's Tale.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recorded by Gwen in Washington, D.C. on May 28, 2006. The Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. Edited by D. Laing Purves. This book is based on the book The Canterbury Tales and Other Poems. The original text contains poems by Chaucer and a lot of notes and explanations by the editor. To view these, please click on the Gutenberg e-text on the LibriVox catalog page of the Canterbury Tales. The Shipman's Tale. Our host upon his stirrups stood anon, and said, Good men, hearken every one. This was a thrifty tale of the knowns. Sir parish priest, quoth he, for God's bones, tell us a tale, as was thy forward yore. I see well that ye learned men in lore can much good by God's dignity. The parson him answered, Benedicity. What ails the man so sinfully to swear? Our host answered, O Jenkin, be ye there? Now, good men, quoth our host, hearken to me. I smell a lollard in the wind, quoth he. Abide, for God's stained passion, for we shall have a predication. This lollard here will preach in us somewhat. Nay, by my father's soul, that shall he not. Said the shipman, Here shall he not preach. He shall no gospel glose hear nor teach. We all believe in the great God, quoth he. He would sow some difficulty, or sprinkle cockle in our clean corn. And therefore, host, I warn thee before, my jolly body shall a tale tell, and I shall clink you so merry a bell, that I shall waken all this company. But it shall not be of philosophy, nor of physic, nor terms quaint of law. There is but little Latin in my maw. The Tale. A merchant whilom dwelled at Saint Denis, that rich was, for which men held him wise. A wife he had of excellent beauty, and companionable and revellous was she, which is a thing that causeth more dispense than worth is all the cheer and reverence that men them do at feasts and at dances, such salutations and continences, passen as doth the window on the wall, put woe in him that pay must for all. The selly husband algate he must pay, he must us clothe, and he must us array, all for his owen worship richly, in which array we dance jollily. And if that he may not, peradventure, or else list not such dispense endure, but thinketh it is wasted and a lost, then must another pay for our cost, or lend us gold, and that is perilous. This noble merchant held a noble house, for which he had all day so great repair, for his largesse, and for his wife was fair, that wonder is, but hearken to my tale. Amongs all these guests, great and smale, there was a monk, a fair man and a bold. I trow a 30 winter he was old. That ever in one was drawn to that place. This young monk, that was so fair of face, acquainted was so with this good man, since that their first knowledge began, that in his house as familiar was he, as it is possible any friend to be. And for as muchel as this good man, and eke this monk, of which that I began, were both the two y-born in one village, the monk him claimed as for cousinage. And he again him said not once nay, but was as glad thereof as fowl of day, for to his heart it was a great pleasance. Thus be they knit with etern' alliance. And each of them gan other to assure of brotherhood while that their life may dure. Free was Dan John, and namely of dispense, as in that house, and full of diligence, to do pleasance, and also great custage. He not forgot to give the least page in all that house, but after their degree he gave the Lord and sithen his menie. When that he came some manner honest thing, for which they were as glad of his coming, as fowl is fain when that the sun upriseth. No more of this now, for it sufficeth. But so befell this merchant on a day, shop him to make ready his array, toward the town of Bruges for to fare, to buy there a portion of ware, for which he hath to Paris sent anon a messenger, and prayed hath Dan John that he should come to Saint Denis and play with him and with his wife a day or tway, ere he to Bruges went in alle wise, this noble monk of which I you devise. Head of his abbot, as him list licence, because he was a man of high prudence, and eke an officer out for to ride, to see their granges and their barns wide. And unto Saint Denis he came anon, who was so welcome as my lord Dan John, our dear cousin, full of courtesy. With him he brought a jub of malvesie, and eke another full of fine vernage, and volatile, as aye was his usage. And thus I let them eat, and drink, and play, this merchant and this monk, a day or tway. The third day the merchant up ariseth, and on his knees sadly him adviseth. To up into his contour house went he, to reckon with himself, as well may be, of thilke year, and that it with him stood, and how that he dispended bad his good, and if that he increased were or non his books and his bags many a one. He laid before him on his counting board, full rich was his treasure and his hoard, for which full fast his contour door he shet, and eke he would that no man should him let of his accounts for the meantime, and thus he sat till it was past prime. Dan John was risen in the morn also, and in the garden walked to and fro. He had his things set full courteously. The good wife came walking full privily into the garden, where he walked soft, and him saluted, as she had done oft. A maiden child came in her company, which as her list she might govern and gie, for yet under the yard was the maid. "O dear cousin mine, Dan John," she said, "what aileth you so wrath for to arise?" "Niece," quoth he, "it ought enough suffice 5 hours for to sleep upon a night, but it were for an old appalled wight, as be these wedded men that lie and dare, as in a form sits a weary hare, all forstraught with hound great and small. But, dear niece, why be you so pale? I trow certes that our good man hath you so laboured since this night began, that you were need to rest hastily." And with that word he laughed full merrily, and of his owen thought he waxed all red. This fairen wife gan for to shake her head, and said thus: "Ye God wot all," quoth she. "Nay, cousin mine, it stands not so with me, for by that God that gave me soul and life, in all the realm of France there is no wife that lessen lust hath to that sorry play. For I may sing alas and well away, that I was born but to no wight," quoth she. "Dare I not tell how that it stands with me? Wherefore I think out of this land to wend, or else of myself to make an end, so full am I of dread, and eke of care." This monk began upon this wife to stare, and said, "Alas, my niece, God forbid that ye for any sorrow or any dread fordo yourself, but tell me your grief. Paraventure I may in your mischief counsel or help, and therefore tell me all your annoy, for it shall be secre. For on my portos here I make an oath, that never in my life, for lief nor loath, nay, shall I of no counsel you bewray." "The same again to you," quoth she, "I say, by God, and by this portos I you swear, though men me woulden all in pieces tear, nay, shall I never, for to go to hell, bewray one word of things that ye me tell, for no cousinage nor alliance, but verily for love and affiance." Thus be they sworn, and thereupon they kissed, and each of them told other what them list. "Cousin," quoth she, "if that I had space, as I have none, and namely in this place, then would I tell a legend of my life, what I have suffered since I was a wife. With mine husband all be he your cousin." "Nay," quoth the monk, "by God and Saint Martin, he is no more cousin unto me than is this leaf that hangeth on the tree. I call him so by Saint Denis of France, to have the more cause of acquaintance of you, which I have loved specifically, aboven all women sickerly. This swear I you on my profession. Tell me your grief, lest that he come adown, and hasten you to go away anon." "My dear love," quoth she, "O my Dan John, full lief were me this counsel for to hide, but out it must, I may no more abide. My husband is to me the worst man that ever was since that the world began. But here I am a wife, it sits not me to tell no whit of our privity, neither in bed nor in none other place. God shield I should tell it for his grace. A wife shall not say of her husband, but all honor as I can understand, save unto you thus much I tell shall, as help me God, he is not worth at all, in no degree, the value of a fly, but yet me grieveth most his niggardly. And well ye wot that women naturally desire things six as well as I. They would that their husbands should be hardy and wise and rich, and therefore free, and buxom to his wife, and fresh in bed. But by that ilk Lord that for us bled, for his honour myself for to array, on Sunday next I must needs pay 100 francs, or else I am lorn. Yet were me lever that I were unborn, then me were done slander or villainy, if mine husband eke might it espy. I were but lost, and therefore I you pray, lend me the sum, or else must I die. Dan John, I say, lend me these 100 francs. Pardie, I will not fail you my thanks, if that you list to do that I you pray. For at a certain day I will you pay, and do to you what pleasance and service that I may do, right as you list devise. And but I do, God take on me vengeance, as foul as ever had Ganilion of France." The gentle monk answered in this manner, "Now truly, mine owen lady dear, I have," quoth he, "on you so great ruth, that I you swear and plight you my truth, that when your husband is to Flanders fair, I will deliver you out of this care, for I will bring you 100 francs." And with that word he caught her by the flanks, and her embraced hard, and kissed her oft. "Now go your way," quoth he, "all still and soft, and let us dine as soon as that ye may, for by my cylinder 'tis prime of day. Go now, and be as true as I shall be." "Now elles God forbid, sir," quoth she. And forth she went, as jolly as a pie, and bade the cookes that they should them hie, so that men might dine, and that anon. Up to her husband is this wife gone, and knocked at his contour boldly. "Qui est là?" quoth he. "Peter, it am I," quoth she. "What, sir, how long all will ye fast? How long time will ye reckon and cast your sums and your books and your things? The devil have part of all such reckonings. Ye have enough, pardy, of God's sonde. Come down to earth, and let your bag stond. Nay, be ye not ashamed that Dan John shall fasting all this day y lang gone. What, let us hear a mass, and go we dine." "Wife," quoth this man, "little canst thou divine The curious business that we have, four of us chapmen, all so God me save, and by that Lord that clapped is Saint Ive, scarcely amongs 20, 10 shall thrive, continually lasting unto our age. We may well make cheer and good visage, and drive forth the word as it may be, and keepen our estate in privity, till we be dead, or else that we play a pilgrimage, or go out of the way. And therefore have I great necessity upon this quaint world to advise me. For evermore must we stand in dread of hap and fortune in our chapmanhead. To Flanders will I go to morrow at day, and come again as soon as e'er I may. For which, my dear wife, I thee beseek, and to every wight buxom and meek, and for to keep our good be curious, and honestly govern well our house. Thou hast enough in every manner wise, that to a thrift household may suffice. Thee lacketh none array, nor no vitale. Of silver in thy purse thou shalt not fail." And with that word his contour door he shet, and down he went, no longer would he let. And hastily a mass was there said, and speedily the tables were laid, and to the dinner fast they them sped. And richly this monk the chapman fed. And after dinner Dan John soberly this chapman took apart, and privily he said him thus: "Cousin, it standeth so, that well I see to Bruges ye will go. God and Saint Austin speed you and guide. I pray ye, cousin, wisely that ye ride. Govern ye also of your diet, attemperly and namely in this heat. Betwixt us two needeth no strange fare. Farewell, cousin, God shield you from care. If anything there be, by day or night, if it lie in my power and my might, that ye me will command in any wise, it shall be done, right as ye will devise. But one thing ere ye go, if it may be, I would pray you for to lend to me 100 francs for a week or twy, for certain beasts that I must buy, to store with a place that is ours. God help me so, I would that it were yours. I shall not fail surely of my day, not for 1,000 francs a mile way. But let this thing be secret, I you pray, for yet tonight these beasts must I buy. And fare now well, mine owen cousin dear. Grand mercy of your cost and of your cheer." This noble merchant gentilly anon answered and said, "O cousin mine, Dan John, now sickerly this is a small request. My gold is yours, when that it you lest, and not only my gold, but my chaffare. Take what you list, God shield that ye spare." But one thing is, we know it well enow, of chapmen, that their money is their plough. We may creance, well we have a name, but goldless for to be, it is no game. Pay it again, when it lies in your ease. After my might, full fain would I you please. These 100 francs set he forth anon, and privily he took them to Dan John. No wight in all this world wist of this loan, saving the merchant and Dan John alone. They drink and speak and roam a while and play, till that Dan John rode unto his abbey. The morrow came, and forth this merchant rideth to Flanders ward, his prentice well him guideth, till he came unto Bruges merrily. Now went this merchant fast and busily about his need, and bide and creanced. He neither played at the dice nor danced, but as a merchant, shortly for to tell, he led his life, and there I let him dwell. The Sunday next, the merchant was y gone. To Saint Denis y comen is Dan John, with crown and beard all fresh and newly shave. In all the house was not so little a knave, nor no wight else that was not full fain, for that my lord Dan John was come again. And short to the point, right for to gone, the fair wife accorded with Dan John, that for these 100 francs he should all night have her in his arms bolt upright. And this accord performed was indeed. In mirth all night a busy life they lead, till it was day that Dan John went his way, and bade the miney farewell, have good day. For none of them, nor no wight in the town, had of Dan John right no suspicion. And forth he rode home to his abbey, or where him list, no more of him I say. The merchant, when that ended was the fair, to Saint Denis he gan for to repair, and with his wife he made feast and cheer, and told her that chaffare was so dear, that needs must he make a chevisance, for he was bound in a recognizance to pay 20,000 shields anon, of which this merchant is to Paris gone, to borrow of certain friends that he had a certain francs, and some with him he lad. And when that he was come into the town, for great cherte and great affection unto Dan John, he went first to play, not for to borrow of him no money, but for to weet and see of his welfare, and for to tell him of his chaffare, as friends do when they meet in fear. Dan John him made feast and merry cheer, and he him told again full specially how he had well y bought and graciously, thanked be God, all whole his merchandise, save that he must in all manner wise maken a chevisance as for his best, and then he should be in joy and rest. Dan John answered, Cert, I am fain that ye in health become born again, and if that I were rich, as have I bliss, of 20,000 shields should ye not miss. For ye so kindly the other day lent me gold, and as I can and may, I thank you by God and by Saint James. But natheless I took unto our dame, your wife at home, the same gold again, upon your bents. She wot it well, certain, by certain tokens that I can her tell. Now, by your leave, I may no longer dwell. Our abbot will out of this town anon, and in his company I must gon. Greet well our dame, mine owen niece sweet, and farewell, dear cousin, till we meet. This merchant, which that was full ware and wise, creanced hath and paid eke Paris to certain Lombards ready in their hond the sum of gold, and got of them his bond, and home he went, merry as a popinjay, for well he knew he stood in such array, that needs must he win in that voyage 1,000 francs above all his costage. His wife full ready met him at the gate, as she was wont of old usage algate, and all that night in mirth they beset, for he was rich and clearly out of debt. When it was day, the merchant gained embrace. His wife all knew and kissed her in the face, and up he went and maked it full tough. "No more," quoth she, "by God ye have enough." And wantonly again with him she played, till at the last this merchant to her said, "By God," quoth he, "I am a little wroth with you, my wife, although it be me loth. And wot ye why? By God, as that I guess, that ye have made a manner strangeness betwixt me and my cousin Dan John. Ye should have warned me ere I had gone, that he you had 100 francs paid. By ready token he had him evil apaid. For that I to him spake of chevisance, he seemed so as by his countenance, but natheless, by God of heaven king, I thought not to ask of him no thing. I pray thee, wife, do thou no more so. Tell me alway, ere that I from thee go, if any debtor hath in mine absence y-paid thee, lest through thy negligence I might him ask a thing that he hath paid." This wife was not afeared nor afraid, but boldly she said, and that anon, "Marry, I defy that false monk Dan John. I keep not of his tokens, never a deal. He took me certain gold, I wot it well. What evil the dumb on his monk's snout! For, God it wot, I weened without doubt that he had given it me because of you, to do therewith mine honour and my prow, for cousinage, and eke for belle cheer, that he hath had full often here. But since I see I stand in such disjoint, I will answer you shortly to the point. You have more slack debtors than am I, for I will pay you well and readily, from day to day, and if so be I fail, I am your wife, score it upon my tail, and I shall pay as soon as ever I may, for, by my troth, I have on mine array, and not in waste, bestowed it every deal. And for I have bestowed it so well, for your honour, for God's sake I say, as be not wroth, but let us laugh and play. Ye shall my jolly body have to wed. By God, I will not pay you but in bed. Forgive it me, mine owen spouse dear, turn hitherward, and make better cheer." The merchant saw none other remedy, and for to chide it were but a folly, since that the thing might not amended be. "Now, wife," he said, "and I forgive it thee, but by thy life be no more so large. Keep better, my good, this give I thee in charge. Thus endeth now my tale, and God us send tailing enough until our lives end." End of the Shipman's Tale.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. This reading by Fox and the Stars of ShiningHalf.com, April 2006. The Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. Edited by D. Laing Purves. This reading is based on the book The Canterbury Tales and Other Poems. The original text contains poems by Chaucer and a lot of notes and explanations by the editor. To view these, please click on the Gutenberg eText link on the LibriVox catalog page of The Canterbury Tales. The Prioress's Tale. The Prologue. "Well said, by Corpus Domini," quoth our host. "Now longe mayst thou sail aby the coast, Thou gentle master, gentle mariner, God give the monk 1,000 last quad year. Aha, fellows, beware of such a jape. The monk put in the manneshood an ape, And in his wife is eke by Saint Austin. Drawing no monk is more into your inn. But now pass over, and let us seek about, Who shall now telle first of all this rout Another tale. And with that word he said, As courteously as it had been a maid, My lady prioresse, by your leave, So that I wist I shoulde you not grieve, I woulde deem that ye telle should A tale next, if so were that ye would. Now will ye vouchesafe, my lady dear? Gladly, quoth she, and said as ye shall hear. The Tale. O Lord, our Lord, thy name how marvellous In this large world y spread, quoth she, For not only thy laude precious Performed is by men of high degree, But by the mouth of children thy bounty Performed is, for on the breast sucking Sometimes showe they thy harrying. Wherefore in laud, as I best can or may, Of thee, and of the white lily flower, Which that thee bare, and is a maid alway, To tell a story I will do my labour, Not that I may increase her honour, For she herselven is honour and root Of bounty next her son, and soule's boot. O mother maid, O maid and mother free, O bush unburnt, burning in Moses' sight, That ravishedst down from the deity, Through thy humbless, the ghost that in thee light, Of whose virtue, when he thine hearte light Conceived was, the Father's sapience, Help me to tell it to thy reverence. Lady, thy bounty, thy magnificence, Thy virtue, and thy great humility, There may no tongue express in no science. For sometimes, Lady, ere men pray to thee, Thou goest before of thy benignity, And gettest us the light through thy prayere, To guiden us unto thy Son so dear. My conning is so weak, O blissful queen, For to declare thy great worthiness, That I may not the weight of it sustene, But as a child of 12 month old or less, That can unnethes any word express, Right so fare I, and therefore I you pray, Guide my song that I shall of you say. There was in Asia, in a great city, Amonges Christian folk a Jewery, Sustained by a lord of that country, For foul usure and lucre villainy, Hateful to Christ and to his company. And through the street men mighte ride and wend, For it was free and open at each end. A little school of Christian folk there stood, Down at the farther end, in which there were Children and heap y come of Christian blood, That learned in that schole year by year Such manner doctrine as men used there, That is to say, to singen and to read, As smalle children do in their childhead. Among these children was a widow's son, A little clergian 7 year of age, That day by day to schole was his won, And eke also, whereso he saw th' image Of Christe's mother, had he in usage, As him was taught, to kneel adown and say Ave Maria as he went by the way. Thus had this widow her little son y taught Our blissful Lady, Christe's mother dear, To worship aye, and he forgot it not, For sely child will always soon alear. But I, when I remember on this mattere, Saint Nicholas stands ever in my presence, For he so young to Christ did reverence. This little child, his little book learning, As he sat in the school at his primere, He Alma Redemptoris hearde sing, As children learned their antiphonere. And as he durst, he drew him near and near, And hearkened aye the wordes and the note, Till he the firste verse knew all by rote. Naught wist he what this Latin was to say, For he so young and tender was of age. But on a day his fellow gan he pray, to expound him this song in his language, or tell him why this song was in usage. Thus prayed he him to construe and declare, full oftentime upon his knees bare. His fellow, which that elder was than he, answered him thus: this song I have heard say was maked of our blissful Lady free, her to salute and eke her to pray, to be our help and succour when we dey. I can no more expound in this mattere. I learn a song, I know but small grammere. And is this song y made in reverence of Christ his mother? Said this innocent. Now certes I will do my diligence to con it all ere Christmas be went. Though that I for my primer shall be shent, and shall be beaten thrice in an hour, I will it con Our Lady to honour. His fellow taught him homeward privily, from day to day, till he could it by rote, and then he sang it well and boldely, from word to word, according with the note. Twice in a day it passed through his throat, to schooleward and homeward when he went. On Christ's mother was set all his intent. As I have said, throughout the Jewery, this little child, as he came to and fro, full merrily then would he sing and cry, O Alma Redemptoris evermo'. The sweetness hath his hearte pierced so of Christ his mother, that to her to pray he cannot stint of singing by the way. Our firste foe, the serpent Satanas, that hath in Jewes' heart his waspe's nest, upswelled and said, O Hebrew people, alas! Is this to you a thing that is honest, that such a boy shall walken as him lest in your despite, and sing of such sentence, which is against your lawes reverence? From thenceforth the Jewes have conspired this innocent out of the world to chase. A homicide thereto have they hired, that in an alley had a privy place. And as the child gan forth by for to pace, this cursed Jew him hent, and held him fast, and cut his throat, and in a pit him cast. I say that in a wardrobe he him threw, whereas the Jewes purged their entrail. O cursed folk, O Herodes all knew, what may your evil intent you avail? Murder will out, certain it will not fail, and namely where th' honour of God shall spread, the blood out crieth on your cursed deed. O martyr souded to virginity, now mayst thou sing and follow everin one the white lamb celestial, quoth she, of which the great evangelist Saint John in Patmos wrote, which saith that they that gon before this lamb and sing a song all new, that never fleshly woman they ne knew. This poore widow waited all that night after her little child, but he came not. For which, as soon as it was dayes light, with face pale, in dread and busy thought, she hath at school and elleswhere him sought, till finally she gan so far espy that he was last seen in the Jewery. With mother's pity in her breast enclosed, she went as she were half out of her mind, to every place where she hath supposed by likelihood her little child to find. And ever on Christ's mother meek and kind she cried, and at the laste thus she wrought, among the cursed Jewes she him sought. She freined and she prayed piteously to every Jew that dwelled in that place, to tell her if her childe went thereby. They saide nay, but Jesus of his grace gave in her thought within a little space, that in that place after her son she cried, where he was cast into a pit beside. O greate God, that performest thy laud by mouth of innocence, lo here thy might, this gem of chastity, this emerald, and eke of martyrdom the ruby bright, where he with throat y-carven lay upright, he Alma Redemptoris gan to sing, so loud that all the place began to ring. The Christian folk that through the streete went, in came for to wonder on this thing, and hastily they for the provost sent. He came anon without a tarrying, and harried Christ that is of heaven King, and eke his mother, honour of mankind, and after that the Jewes let he bind. With torment and with shameful death each one, the provost did these Jewes for to sterve, that of this murder wist, and that anon. He woulde no such cursedness observe. Evil shall have that evil will deserve. Therefore with horses wild he did them draw, and after that he hung them by the law. The child with piteous lamentation was taken up, singing his song alway, and with honour and with great procession they carry him unto the next abbey. His mother swooning by the bier lay. Unnethes might the people that were there this newe Rachel bringe from his bier. Upon his bier lay this innocent, before the altar while the masses last, and after that th' abbot and his convent have sped them for to bury him full fast. And when they holy water on him cast, yet spake this child when sprinkled was the water, and sang O Alma Redemptoris Mater. This abbot, which that was a holy man, as monkes be, or elles ought to be, this younger child to conjure he began, and said, O deare child, I halse thee, in virtue of the Holy Trinity, tell me what is thy cause for to sing, since that thy throat is cut, to my seeming. My throat is cut unto my necke bone, saide this child, and as by way of kind, I should have died, yea, long time agone, but Jesus Christ, as ye in bookes find, will that his glory last and be in mind, and for the worship of his mother dear, yet may I sing O Alma loud and clear. This well of mercy, Christe's mother sweet, I loved alway after my conning, and when that I my life should forlete, to me she came and bade me for to sing this anthem verily in my dying, as ye have heard, and when that I had sung, methought she laid a grain upon my tongue. Wherefore I sing, and sing I must certain, in honour of that blissful maiden free, till from my tongue off taken is the grain, and after that thus saide she to me, My little child, then will I fetche thee, when that the grain is from thy tongue take. Be not aghast, I will thee not forsake. This holy monk, this abbot him mean I, his tongue out caught, and took away the grain. And he gave up the ghost full softely, and when this abbot had this wonder seen, his salte teares trickled down as rain, and groff he fell all flat upon the ground, and still he lay as he had been y-bound. The convent lay eke on the pavement, weeping and harrying Christ's mother dear, and after that they rose, and forth they went, and took away this martyr from his bier, and in a tomb of marble stones clear enclosed they his little body sweet, where he is now, God lean us for to meet. O younge Hugh of Lincoln, slain also, with cursed Jewes, as it is notable, for it is but a little while ago, pray eke for us, we sinful folk unstable, that of his mercy God so merciable, on us his greate mercy multiply, for reverence of his mother Mary. End of the Prioress's Tale.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information and to find out how you can volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. This is the Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. This is the tale of Sir Topaz. The Prologue. When said was this miracle every man, as sober was that wonder was to see. Till that our host to Japan he began, and then at erst he looked upon me, and saith thus, What man art thou? Thou lookest as thou wouldst find an hare, for ever on the ground I see thee stare. Approach near, and look up merrily. Now ware you, sirs, and let this man have place. He in the waist is shapen as well as I. This were a puppet in an armed embrace. For any woman small and fair of face, he seemeth elvish by his countenance, for unto no wight doth he dalliance. Say now somewhat, since other folk have said, tell us a tale of mirth, and that anon. Host, quoth I, be not evil apaid, for other tale certes can I none. Out of a rhyme I learned yore agone. Yea, that is good, quoth he. Now shall we hear some dainty thing, methinketh, by thy cheer? The tale, the first fit. Listen, lordings, in good intent, and I will tell you verament of mirth and of solace. All of a knight was fair and gent, in battle and in tournament. His name was Sir Thomas. He born he was in far country, in Flanders all beyond the sea, at Popering in the place. His father was a man full free, and lord he was of that country, as it was Godde's grace. Sir Thopas was a doughty swain, white was his face as pandemain, his lips red as rose. His road is like scarlet in grain, and I tell you in good certain, he had a seemly nose. His hair, his beard was like saffroon, that to his girdle reached a doon, his shoes of cordowane. Of Bruges were his hosen brown, his robe was of Sillertown, that cost a many a Jane. He could hunt at the wild deer, and ride on hawking for revere, with grey goshawk on hand. Thereto he was a good archer, of wrestling was there none his peer, where any ram should stand. Full many a maiden bright in bower, they mourned for him paramour, when there were better sleep. But he was chaste and no lecher, and sweet as is the bramble flower that beareth the red heap. And so it fell upon a day, forsooth as I tell may, Sir Thopas would outride. He worth upon his steed grey, and in his hand a lance gay, a long sword by his side. He pricked through a fair forest, wherein is many a wild beast, yea, both buck and hare. And as he pricked north and east, I tell it you, him had almost betide a sorry care. There sprang herbs great and small, the licorice and the setterwall, and many a clove gilofre, and nutmeg to put in ale, whether it be moist or stale, or for to lay in coffer. The bird sang, it is no jay that spare her can the popinjay, that joy it was to hear. The throstle cock made eke his lay, the wood dove upon the spray, she sang full loud and clear. Sir Thopas fell in love longing, all when he heard the throstle sing, and pricked as he were wood. His fair steed in his pricking so sweated that men might him bring, his sides were all blood. Sir Thopas eke so wary was, for pricking on the softer grass, so fierce was his courage, that down he laid him in that place, to make his steed some solace, and give him good forage. Ah, Saint Mary Benedicti, what aileth thilke love at me, to bind me so sore? Me dreamed all this night, pardie, an elf queen shall my leman be, and sleep under my gore. An elf queen will I love, I wis, for in this world no woman is worthy to be my make in town. All other women I forsake, and to an elf queen I me take, by dale and eke by down. Into his saddle he clomb anon, and pricked over stile and stone, an elf queen for me to spy, till he so long had ridden and gone, that he found in a privy one that country of Faery. So wild, for in that country was there none that to him durst ride or gone, neither wife nor child. Till that there came a great giant, whose name was Sir Oliphant, a perilous man of deed. He said, Child, by Termagant, but if thou pricket out mine haunt, anon I slay thy steed with mace. Here is the Queen of Faery, with harp and pipe and symphony, dwelling in this place. The child said, Also may I, that tomorrow will I meet thee, when I have mine armour. And yet I hope, par mes fay, that thou shalt with this lance gay, abayen it full sore, thy maw shall I pierce if I may, ere it be fully prime of day, for here thou shalt be slaw. Sir Topaz drew back full fast, this giant at him stones cast, out of a Falstaff sling, but fair escaped child Topaz, and all it was through God's grace, and through his fair bearing. Yet listen, lordings, to my tale, merrier than the nightingale, for now I will you round how Sir Topaz with cider smale, pricking over hill and dale, is come again to town. His merry men commanded he to make him both game and glee, for needest must he fight with the giant with heades three, for paramour and jollity of one that shone full bright. Do come, he said, my minstrels, and guitar for to tell a tales, anon in mine arming, of romances that be royals, of popes and of cardinals, and eke of love longing. They fetched him first the sweete wine, and mead eke in a masseline, and royal spicery, of gingerbread that was full fine, and licorice and eke cumine, with sugar that is tree. He did next his white layer, of cloth and of lake fine and clear, a breech and eke a shirt, and next his shirt and hacketon, and over that an habergeon for piercing of his heart, and over that a fine hauberk was all y wrought of Jew's work, full strong it was of plate, and over that his coat armour, as white as is the lily flower, in which he would debate. His shield was all of gold so red, and therein was a boar's head, a carbuncle beside. And there he swore on ale and bread, how that giant should be dead, betide what so betide. His jambo were of curberly, his sword a sheath of ivory, his helm of latoun bright, his saddle was of rule bone, his bridle as the sun shone, or as the moonlight. His spear was a fine cypress, that bodeth war and nothing peace, the head full sharp y ground. His steed was all a dapple grey, it went an amble in the way, full softly and round in land. Lo, lordes mine, here is a fit, if ye will any more of it, to tell it I will fand. The second fit. Now hold your mouth for charity, both knight and lady free, and hearken to my spell, of battle and of chivalry, of ladies' love and druery, anon I will you tell. Men speak of romances of price, of horn child and of appetice, of bevis and Sir Guy, of Sir Libeau and plain Demour, but Sir Topaz he bears the flower of royal chivalry. His good steed he all bestrode, and forth upon his way he glode, as sparkle out of brand. Upon his crest he bare a tower, and therein stick a lily flower, God shield his course from shand. And for he was a knight and trous, he would sleepen in none house, but liggen in his hood. His brighter helm was his wanger, and by him baited his destre, of herbs fine and good. Himself drank water of the well, as did the knight Sir Percivale, so worthy under weed, till on a day. End of the tale of Sir Topaz.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, visit LibriVox.org. The Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. Edited by D. Laing Purves. This reading is based on the book The Canterbury Tales and Other Poems. The original text contains poems by Chaucer and a lot of notes and explanations by the editor. To view these, please click on the Gutenberg eText link on the LibriVox catalogue page of the Canterbury Tales. Chaucer's Tale of Melibœus. The Prologue. No more of this, for God's dignity, quoth our host, for thou makest me so weary of thy very lewdness, that all so wisely, God my soul bless, mine ears ache for thy draughty speech. Now such a rhyme, the devil I beseech, this may well be rhymed doggerel, quoth he. Why so, quoth I? Why wilt thou let me more of my tale than any other man, since that it is the best rhyme that I can? By God, quoth he, for plainly at one word thy draughty rhyming is not worth a turd. Thou dost not else but to spendest time. Sir, at one word thou shalt no longer rhyme. Let's see whether thou canst tell in aught in jest, or tell in prose somewhat at the least, in which there be some mirth or some doctrine. Gladly, quoth I, by God's sweet pine, I will tell you a little thing in prose, that ought to like you, as I suppose, or else that as ye be too dangerous. It is a moral tale virtuous, albeit told sometimes in sundry wise by sundry folk, as I shall you devise. As thus, ye wot that every evangelist that telleth us the pain of Jesus Christ, he saith not all thing as his fellow doth, but none the less their sentence is all soth, and all according as in their sentence, or be there in their telling difference. For some of them say more, and some say less, when they his pitch's passion express. I mean of Mark and Matthew, Luke and John, but doubtless their sentence is all one. Therefore, lordings all, I you beseech, if that you think I vary in my speech, as thus, though that I tell some deal more of proverbs than ye have heard before comprehended in this little treatise here, to enforce with the effect of my matter, and though I not the same words say as ye have heard, yet to you all I pray, blame me not, for as in my sentence shall ye nowhere find no difference from the sentence of the treatise light, after the which this merry tale I write, and therefore hearken to what I shall say, and let me tell in all my tale, I pray. The tale. A young man called Melibœus, mighty and rich, begat upon his wife that was called Prudence a daughter which that was called Sophia. Upon a day befell that he for his disport went into the fields him to play. His wife and eke his daughter hath he left within his house, of which the doors were fast shut. 3 of his old foes have it espied, and set ladders to the wall of his house, and by the windows be entered, and beaten his wife, and wounded his daughter with 5 mortal wounds in 5 sundry places, that is to say, in her feet, in her hands, in her ears, in her nose, and in her mouth, and left her for dead, and went away. When Melibœus returned was into his house, and saw all this mischief, he, like a man mad, rending his clothes, gan weep and cry. Prudence his wife, as far forth as she durst, besought him of his weeping for to stint, but not forthy he gan to weep and cry ever the more. This noble wife Prudence called upon her the sentence of Ovid in his book that is called The Remedy of Love, wherein he saith, he is a fool that disturbeth the mother to weep in the death of her child, till she have wept her fill, as for a certain time, and then shall a man do his diligence with amiable words her to recomfort, and pray her of her weeping for to stint. For which reason this noble wife Prudence suffered her husband for to weep and cry, as for a certain space, and when she saw her time, she said to him in this wise, Alas, my lord, quoth she, why make ye yourself for to be like a fool? Forsooth it appertaineth not to a wise man to make such a sorrow. Your daughter, with the grace of God, shall wear it and escape. And all were it so that she right now were dead, ye ought not for her death yourself to destroy. Seneca saith, the wise man shall not take too great discomfort for the death of his children, but certes he should suffer it in patience, as well as he abideth the death of his own proper person. Melibœus answered anon, and said, What man, quoth he, should of his weeping stint, that hath so great a cause to weep? Jesus Christ our Lord himself wept for the death of Lazarus his friend. Prudence answered, Certes, well I wot, a tempered weeping is nothing defended to him that sorrowful is, among folk in sorrow, but it is rather granted him to weep. The Apostle Paul unto the Romans writeth, Man shall rejoice with them that make joy, and weep with such folk as weep. But though temperate weeping be granted, outrageous weeping certes is defended. Measure of weeping should be conserved after the law that teacheth Seneca. When that thy friend is dead, quoth he, let not thine eyes too moist be of tears, nor too much dry, although the tears come to thine eyes, let them not fall. And when thou hast forgone thy friend, do diligence to get again another friend, and this is more wisdom than to weep for thy friend which thou hast lorn, for therein is no boot. And therefore, if ye govern you by sapience, put away sorrow out of your heart. Remember you that Jesus Sirach said, A man that is joyous and glad in heart, it him conserveth flourishing in his age, but soothly a sorrowful heart maketh his bones dry. He said eke thus, that sorrow in heart slayeth many a full man. Solomon saith, that right as moths in the sheep's fleece annoy to the clothes, and the small worms to the tree, right so annoyeth sorrow to the heart of man. Wherefore us ought as well in the death of our children, as in the loss of our goods temporal, have patience. Remember you upon the patient Job, when he had lost his children and his temporal substance, and in his body endured and received full many a grievous tribulation, yet said he thus, Our Lord hath given it to me, our Lord hath bereft it me. Right as our Lord would, right so it be done. Blessed be the name of our Lord. To these foresaid things answered Melibœus unto his wife Prudence. All thy words, quoth he, be true, and thereto also profitable. But truly mine heart is troubled with this sorrow so grievously that I know not what to do. Let call, quoth Prudence, thy true friends all, and thy lineage, which be wise, and tell to them your case, and hearken what they say in counselling, and govern you after their sentence. Solomon saith, work all things by counsel, and thou shalt never repent. Then, by counsel of his wife Prudence, this Melibœus let call a great congregation of folk, as surgeons, physicians, old folk and young, and some of his old enemies reconciled, as by their semblance, to his love and to his grace. And therewithal there come some of his neighbours, that did him reverence more for dread than for love, as happeneth oft. There came also full many subtle flatterers, and wise advocates learned in the law. And when these folk together assembled were, this Melibœus in his sorrowful wise showed them his case, and by the manner of his speech it seemed that in heart he bare a cruel ire, ready to do vengeance upon his foes, and suddenly desired that the war should begin, but nevertheless yet asked he their counsel in this manner. A surgeon, by licence and assent of such as were wise, uprose, and to Melibœus said as ye may hear. Sir, quoth he, as to us surgeons appertaineth, that we do to every wight the best we can, whereas we be withholden, and to our patient that we do no damage. Wherefore it happeneth many a time and oft, that when two men have wounded each other, one same surgeon healeth them both. Wherefore unto our art it is not pertinent to nurse war, nor parties to support. But certes as to the warishing of your daughter, albeit so that perilously she be wounded, we shall do so attentive business from day to night, that with the grace of God she shall be whole and sound as soon as is possible. Almost right in the same wise the physicians answered, save that they said a few words more, that right as maladies be cured by their contraries, right so shall man warish war by peace. His neighbours full of envy, his feigned friends that seemed reconciled, and his flatterers made semblance of weeping, and impaired and aggrieved much of this matter, in praising greatly Melibœus of might, of power, of riches, and of friends, despising the power of his adversaries, and said utterly that he anon should wreak him on his foes, and begin war. Uprose then an advocate that was wise, by leave and by counsel of other that were wise, and said, Lordings, the need for which we be assembled at this place is a full heavy thing, and a high matter, because of the wrong and the wickedness that hath been done, and eke by reason of the great damages that in time coming be possible to fall for the same cause, and eke by reason of the great riches and power of the parties both, for which reasons it were a full great peril to err in this matter. Wherefore, Melibœus, this is our sentence. We counsel you above all things that right anon thou do thy diligence in keeping of thy body, in such a wise that thou want no espy nor watch thy body to save. And after that we counsel that in thine house thou set sufficient garrison, so that they may as well thy body as thy house defend. But certes, to move war or suddenly to do vengeance, we may not deem in so little time that it were profitable. Wherefore we ask leisure and space to have deliberation in this case to deem. For the common proverb saith thus, he that soon deemeth soon shall repent. And eke men say that judge is wise, that soon understandeth the matter, and judgeth by leisure. For albeit so that all tarrying be annoying, algates it is no reproof in giving of judgment, nor in vengeance taking, when it is sufficient and reasonable. And that showed our Lord Jesus Christ by example. For when that the woman that was taken in adultery was brought in his presence to know what should be done with her person, albeit that he wist himself what he would answer, yet would he not answer suddenly, but he would have deliberation, and in the ground he wrote twice. And by these causes we ask deliberation, and we shall then by the grace of God counsel the thing that shall be profitable. Up started then the young folk anon at once, and the most part of that company have scorned these wise old men, and begun to make noise, and said, Right as while that iron is hot men should smite, right so men should wreak their wrongs while that they be fresh and new. And with loud voice they cried, War! Up rose then one of those old wise, and with his hand made countenance that men should hold them still, and give him audience. Lordings, quoth he, there is full many a man that crieth war, that wot full little what war amounteth. War at his beginning hath so great an entering and so large, that every wight may enter him when liketh, and easily find war. Certes, what end shall fall thereof it is not light to know. For soothly, when war is once begun, there is full many a child unborn of his mother that shall starve young by cause of that war, or else live in sorrow and die in wretchedness. And therefore, ere that any war be begun, men must have great counsel and great deliberation. And when this old man weened to enforce his tale by reasons, well nigh all at once began they to rise for to break his tale, and bid him full oft his words abridge. For soothly he that preacheth to them that list not hear his words, his sermon them annoyeth. For Jesus Sirach saith, that music and weeping is a noyous thing. This is to say, as much availeth to speak before folk to whom his speech annoyeth, as to sing before him that weepeth. And when this wise man saw that him wanted audience, all shamefast, he sat him down again. For Solomon saith, Whereas thou mayest have no audience, enforce thee not to speak. I see well, quoth this wise man, that the most common proverb is sooth, that good counsel wanteth when it is most need. Yet had this Melibœus in his counsel many folk that privily in his ear counselled him certain thing, and counselled him the contrary in general audience. When Melibœus had heard that the greatest part of his counsel were accorded, that he should make war, anon he consented to their counselling, and fully affirmed their sentence. Dame Prudence, seeing her husband's resolution thus taken, in full humble wise, when she saw her time, begins to counsel him against war, by a warning against haste in requital of either good or evil. Melibœus tells her that he will not work by her counsel, because he should be held a fool if he rejected for her advice the opinion of so many wise men, because all women are bad, because it would seem that he had given her the mastery over him, and because she could not keep his secret if he resolved to follow her advice. To these reasons Prudence answers that it is no folly to change counsel when things, or men's judgments of them, change, especially to alter a resolution taken on the impulse of a great multitude of folk, where every man crieth and clattereth what him liketh, that if all women had been wicked, Jesus Christ would never have descended to be born of a woman, nor showed himself first to a woman after his resurrection, and that when Solomon said he had found no good woman, he meant that God alone was supremely good, that her husband would not seem to give her the mastery by following her counsel, for he had his own free choice in following or rejecting it, and that he knew well, and had often tested, her great silence, patience, and secrecy. And whereas he had quoted a saying, that in wicked counsel women vanquish men, she reminds him that she would counsel him again doing a wickedness, on which he had set his mind, and cites instances to show that many women have been and yet are fully good, and their counsel wholesome and profitable. Lastly, she quotes the words of God himself, when he was about to make woman as an helpmeet for him, and promises that, if her husband will trust her counsel, she will restore to him his daughter whole and sound, and make him have honour in this case. Melibœus answers that because of his wife's sweet words, and also because he has proved and assayed her great wisdom and her great truth, he will govern him by her counsel in all things. Thus encouraged, Prudence enters on a long discourse, full of learned citations, regarding the manner in which counsellors should be chosen and consulted, and the times and reasons for changing a counsel. First, God must be besought for guidance. Then, a man must well examine his own thoughts of such things as he holds to be best for his own profit, driving out of his heart anger, covetousness, and hastiness, which perturb and pervert the judgment. Then he must keep his counsel secret, unless confiding it to another shall be more profitable, but in so confiding it he shall say nothing to bias the mind of the counsellor toward flattery or subserviency. After that, he should consider his friends and his enemies, choosing of the former such as be most faithful and wise, and eldest and most approved in counselling, and even of these only a few. Then he must eschew the counselling of fools, of flatterers, of his old enemies that be reconciled, of servants who bear him great reverence and fear, of folk that be drunken and can hide no counsel, of such as counsel one thing privily and the contrary openly, and of young folk, for their counselling is not ripe. Then in examining his counsel, he must truly tell his tale. He must consider whether the thing he proposes to do be reasonable, within his power, and acceptable to the more part and the better part of his counsellors. He must look at the things that may follow from his counselling, choosing the best and waiving all besides. He must consider the root whence the matter of his counsel is engendered, what fruits it may bear, and from what causes they be sprung. And having thus examined his counsel and approved it by many wise folk and old, he shall consider if he may perform it, and make of it a good end. If he be in doubt, he shall choose rather to suffer than to begin, but otherwise he shall prosecute his resolution steadfastly, till the enterprise be at an end. As to changing his counsel, a man may do so without reproach, if the cause cease, or when a new case betides, or if he find that by error or otherwise harm or damage may result, or if his counsel be dishonest or come of dishonest cause, or if it be impossible or may not properly be kept. And he must take it for a general rule, that every counsel which is affirmed so strongly that it may not be changed for any condition that may betide, that counsel is wicked. Melibœus, admitting that his wife had spoken well and suitably as to counsellors and counsel in general, prays her to tell him in especial what she thinks of the counsellors whom they have chosen in their present need. Prudence replies that his counsel in this case could not properly be called a counselling, but a movement of folly, and points out that he has erred in sundry wise against the rules which he had just laid down. Granting that he has erred, Melibœus says that he is all ready to change his counsel right as she will devise. For as the proverb runs, to do sin is human, but to persevere long in sin is the work of the devil. Prudence then minutely recites and analyses and criticizes the counsel given to her husband in the assembly of his friends. She commends the advice of the physicians and the surgeons, and urges that they should be well rewarded for their noble speech and their services in healing Sophia, and she asks Melibœus how he understands their proposition that one country must be cured by another country. Melibœus answers that he should do vengeance on his enemies who had done him wrong. Prudence, however, insists that vengeance is not the contrary of vengeance, nor wrong of wrong, but the like, and that wickedness should be healed by goodness, discord by accord, war by peace. She proceeds to deal with the counsel of the lawyers and wise folk that advised Melibœus to take prudent measures for the security of his body and of his house. First, she would have her husband pray for the protection and aid of Christ, then commit the keeping of his person to his true friends, then suspect and avoid all strange folk, and liars, and such people as she had already warned him against, then beware of presuming on his strength, or the weakness of his adversary, and neglecting to guard his person, for every wise man dreadeth his enemy. Then he should evermore be on the watch against ambush and all espial, even in what seems a place of safety, though he should not be so cowardly as to fear where is no cause for dread, yet he should dread to be poisoned, and therefore shun scorners, and fly their words as venom. As to the fortification of his house, she points out that towers and great edifices are costly and laborious, yet useless, unless defended by true friends that be old and wise, and the greatest and strongest garrison that a rich man may have, as well to keep his person as his goods, is that he may be beloved by his subjects and by his neighbours. Warmly approving the counsel that in all this business Melibœus should proceed with great diligence and deliberation, Prudence goes on to examine the advice given by his neighbours that do him reverence without love, his old enemies reconciled, his flatterers that counselled him certain things privily and openly counselled him the contrary, and the young folk that counselled him to avenge himself and make war at once. She reminds him that he stands alone against 3 powerful enemies, whose kindred are numerous and close, while his are fewer and remote in relationship, that only the judge who has jurisdiction in a case may take sudden vengeance on any man, that her husband's power does not accord with his desire, and that if he did take vengeance, it would only breed fresh wrongs and contests. As to the causes of the wrong done to him, she holds that God, the causer of all things, has permitted him to suffer because he has drunk so much honey of sweet temporal riches and delights and honours of this world, that he is drunken and has forgotten Jesus Christ his Saviour. The 3 enemies of mankind, the flesh, the fiend, and the world, have entered his heart by the windows of his body, and wounded his soul in 5 places, that is to say, the deadly sins that have entered into his heart by the 5 senses, and in the same manner Christ has suffered his 3 enemies to enter his house by the windows, and wound his daughters in the 5 places before specified. Melibœus demurs that if his wife's objections prevailed, vengeance would never be taken, and that thence great mischiefs would arise. But Prudence replies that the taking of vengeance lies with the judges, to whom the private individual must have recourse. Melibœus declares that such vengeance does not please him, and that, as fortune has nourished and helped him from his childhood, he will now essay her, trusting, with God's help, that she will aid him to avenge his shame. Prudence warns him against trusting to fortune, all the less because she has hitherto favoured him, for just on that account she is the more likely to fail him, and she calls on him to leave his vengeance with the sovereign judge, that avengeth all villainies and wrongs. Melibœus argues that if he refrains from taking vengeance, he will invite his enemies to do him further wrong, and he will be put and held over low. But Prudence contends that such a result can be brought about only by the neglect of the judges, not by the patience of the individual. Supposing that he had leave to avenge himself, she repeats that he is not strong enough, and quotes the common saw, that it is madness for a man to survive with a stronger than himself, peril to strive with one of equal strength, and folly to strive with a weaker. But considering his own defaults and demerits, remembering the patience of Christ and the undeserved tribulations of the saints, the brevity of this life with all its trouble and sorrow, the discredit thrown on the wisdom and training of a man who cannot bear wrong with patience, he should refrain wholly from taking vengeance. Melibœus submits that he is not at all a perfect man, and his heart will never be at peace until he is avenged, and that as his enemies disregarded the peril with which they attacked him, so he might, without reproach, incur some peril in attacking them in return, even though he did a great excess in avenging one wrong by another. Prudence strongly deprecates all outrage or excess, but Melibœus insists that he cannot see that it might greatly harm him though he took a vengeance, for he is richer and mightier than his enemies, and all things obey money. Prudence thereupon launches into a long dissertation on the advantages of riches, the evils of poverty, the means by which wealth should be gathered, and the manner in which it should be used, and concludes by counselling her husband not to move war and battle through trust in his riches, for they suffice not to maintain war, the battle is not always to the strong or the numerous, and the perils of conflict are many. Melibœus then curtly asks her for her counsel how he shall do him in this need, and she answers that certainly she counsels him to agree with his adversaries and have peace with them. Melibœus on this cries out that plainly she loves not his honour or his worship, in counselling him to go and humble himself before his enemies, crying mercy to them that, having done him so grievous wrong, ask him not to be reconciled. Then Prudence, making semblance of wrath, retorts that she loves his honour and profit as she loves her own, and ever has done. She cites the scriptures in support of her counsel to seek peace, and says she will leave him to his own courses, for she knows right well he is so stubborn that he will do nothing for her. Melibœus then relents, admits that he is angry and cannot judge right, and putting himself wholly in her hands, promising to do just as she desires, and admitting that he is the more held to love and praise her if she reproves him in his folly. Then Dame Prudence discovered all her counsel and her will unto him, and said, I counsel you, quoth she, above all things, that ye make peace between God and you, and being reconciled unto him and to his grace. For as I have said heretofore, God hath suffered you to have this tribulation and disease for your sins. And if you do as I say you, God will send you adversaries unto you, and make them fall at your feet, ready to do your will and your commandment. For Solomon saith, when the condition of man is pleasant and liking to God, he changeth the hearts of the man's adversaries, and constraineth them to beseech him of peace of grace. And I pray you let me speak with your adversaries in privy place, for they shall not know it is by your will or your assent, and then, when I know their will and their intent, I may counsel you the more surely. Dame, quoth Melibœus, do your will and your liking, for I put me wholly in your disposition and ordinance. Then Dame Prudence, when she saw the good will of her husband, deliberated and took advice in herself, thinking how she might bring this need unto a good end. And when she saw her time, she sent for those adversaries to come to her in a privy place, and showed wisely to them the great goods that come of peace, and the great harms and perils that be in war, and said to them in goodly manner how that they ought to have great repentance of the injuries and wrongs that they had done to Melibœus her lord, and unto her and her daughter. And when they heard the goodly words of Dame Prudence, then they were surprised and ravished, and had so great joy of her that wonder was to tell. Ah, lady, quoth they, you have showed unto us the blessing of sweetness, after the saying of David the prophet, for the reconciling which we be not worthy to have in no manner, but we ought require it with great contrition and humility, you of your great goodness have presented unto us. Now see we well that the science and cunning of Solomon is full true, for he saith that sweet words multiply and increase friends, and make shrews to be debonair and meek. Certes we put our deed and all our manner and cause all wholly in your good will, and be ready to obey unto the speech and commandment of my lord Melibœus. And therefore, dear and benign lady, we pray you and beseech you as meekly as we can and may, that it like unto your great goodness to fulfil indeed your goodly words. For we consider and acknowledge that we have offended and grieved my lord Melibœus out of measure, so far forth that we be not of power to make him amends, and therefore we oblige and bind us and our friends to do all his will and his commandment. But peradventure he hath such heaviness and such wrath to usward, because of our offence, that he will enjoin us such a pain as we may not bear or sustain. And therefore, noble lady, we beseech to your womanly pity to take such advisement in this need, that we, nor our friends, be not disinherited and destroyed through our folly. Certes, quoth Prudence, it is an hard thing, and right perilous, that a man put him all utterly in the arbitration and judgment, and in the might and power of his enemy. For Solomon saith, believe me, and give credence to that I shall say, to thy son, to thy wife, to thy friend, nor to thy brother, give thou never might nor mastery over thy body, while thou livest. Now since he defendeth that a man should not give to his brother, nor to his friend, the might of his body, by a stronger reason he defendeth and forbiddeth a man to give himself to his enemy. And nevertheless I counsel you, that you mistrust not my lord, for I wot well, and know verily, that he is debonair and meek, large, courteous, and nothing desirous nor envious of good nor riches, for there is nothing in this world that he desireth save only worship and honour. Furthermore, I know well, and am right sure, that he shall do nothing in this need without counsel of me, and I shall so work in this case, that by the grace of our Lord God you shall be reconciled unto us. Then said they with one voice, Worshipful lady, we put us and our goods all fully in your will and disposition, and be ready to come, what day that it like unto your nobleness, to limit us or assign us, for to make our obligation and bond as strong as it liketh unto your goodness, that we may fulfil the will of you and of my lord Melibœus. When Dame Prudence had heard the answer of these men, she bade them go again privily, and she returned to her lord Melibœus, and told him how she found his adversaries full repentant, acknowledging full lowly their sins and trespasses, and how they were ready to suffer all pain, requiring and praying him of mercy and pity. Then said Melibœus, he is well worthy to have pardon and forgiveness of his sins, that excuseth not his sin, but acknowledgeth and repenteth him, asking indulgence. For Seneca saith, there is the remission and forgiveness where the confession is, for confession is neighbour to innocence. And therefore I assent and confirm me to have peace, but it is good that we do naught without the assent and will of our friends. Then was Prudence right glad and joyful, and said, Certes, sir, you be well and goodly advised, for right as by the counsel, assent, and help of your friends you have been stirred to avenge you and make war, right so, without their counsel shall ye not accord you, nor have peace with your adversaries. For the law saith, there is nothing so good by way of kind as a thing to be unbound by him that it was bound. And then Dame Prudence, without delay or tarrying, set anon her messengers for their kin and for their old friends, which were true and wise, and told them by order in the presence of Melibœus all this matter, as it is above expressed and declared, and prayed them that they would give their advice and counsel what were best to do in this need. And when Melibœus' friends had taken their advice and deliberation of the foresaid matter, and had examined it by great business and great diligence, they gave full counsel for to have peace and rest, and that Melibœus should with good heart receive his adversaries to forgiveness and mercy. And when Dame Prudence had heard the assent of her lord Melibœus, and the counsel of his friends, accord with her will and her intention, she was wondrous glad in her heart, and said, There is an old proverb that saith, The goodness that thou mayest do this day, do it, and abide not nor delay it till tomorrow. And therefore I counsel you, that you send your messengers, such as be discreet and wise, unto your adversaries, telling them on your behalf, that if they will treat of peace and of accord, that they shape them without delay and tarrying, to come to us. Which thing performed was indeed. And when these trespassers and repenting folk of their follies, that is to say, the adversaries of Melibœus, had heard what these messengers said unto them, they were right glad and joyful, and answered full meekly and benignly, yielding graces and thanks to their lord Melibœus and to all his company, and shaped them, without delay, to go to the messengers, and obey to the commandment of their lord Melibœus. And right anon they took their way to the court of Melibœus, and took with them some of their true friends to make faith for them, and to be their borrows. And when they were come to the presence of Melibœus, he said to them these words: It stands thus, quoth Melibœus, and sooth it is, that ye, causeless and without skill and reason, have done great injuries and wrongs to me, and to my wife Prudence, and to my daughter also. For ye have entered into my house by violence, and have done such outrage, that all men know well that ye have deserved the death, and therefore will I know and weet of you, whether ye will put the punishing and chastising, and the vengeance of this outrage, in the will of me and of my wife, or ye will not. Then the wisest of them three answered for them all, and said, Sir, quoth he, we know well that we be unworthy to come to the court of so great a lord, and so worthy as ye be, for we have so greatly mistaken us, and have offended and guilt in such wise against your high lordship, that truly we have deserved the death. But yet for the great goodness and debonairte that all the world witnesseth of your person, we submit us, that the excellence and benignity of your gracious lordship, and be ready to obey all to your commandments, beseeching you, that of your merciable pity you will consider our great repentance and low submission, and grant us forgiveness of our outrageous trespass and offence. For well we know that your liberal grace and mercy stretch them further into goodness, than do our outrageous guilt and trespass into wickedness. Albeit that cursedly and damnably we have a guilt against your high lordship. Then Melibœus took them up from the ground full benignly, and received their obligations and their bonds, by their oaths upon their pledges and borrows, and assigned them a certain date to return unto his court for to receive and accept sentence and judgment, that Melibœus would command to be done on them, by the causes aforesaid, which things ordained, every man returned home to his house. And when that Dame Prudence saw her time, she framed and asked her lord Melibœus what vengeance he thought to take of his adversaries. To which Melibœus answered and said, Certes, quoth he, I think and purpose me fully to disinherit them of all that they ever have, and for to put them in exile evermore. Certes, quoth Dame Prudence, this were a cruel sentence, and much against reason. For ye be rich enough, and have no need of other men's goods, and ye might lightly in this wise get you a covetous name, which is a vicious thing, and ought to be eschewed of every good man. For after the saying of the apostle, covetousness is the root of all harms. And therefore it were better for you to lose much good of your own, than for to take of their good in this manner. For better it is to lose good with worship, than to win good with villainy and shame. And every man ought to do his diligence and his business to get him a good name. And yet shall he not only busy himself in keeping his good name, but he shall also enforce him always to do something by which he may renew his good name. For it is written, that the old good of a man is soon gone and past, when it is not renewed. And as touching that ye say, that ye will exile your adversaries, that thinketh ye much against reason and out of measure, consider the power that they have given you upon themselves. And it is written, that he is worthy to lose his privilege that misuseth the might and the power that is given him. And I set case, ye might enjoin them that pain by right and by law, which I trow ye may not do, I say, ye might not put it to execution peradventure, and then it were like to return to the war as it was before. And therefore, if ye will that men do you obeisance, ye must deem more courteously, that is to say, ye must give more easy sentences and judgments. For it is written, he that most courteously commandeth, to him men must obey. And therefore I pray you, that in this necessity and in this need ye cast you to overcome your heart. For Seneca saith, that he that overcometh his heart overcometh twice. And Tullius saith, there is nothing so commendable in a great lord as when he is debonair and meek, and appeaseth him lightly. And I pray you that you will now forbear to do vengeance in such a manner that your good name may be kept and conserved, and that men may have cause and matter to praise you of pity and mercy, and that ye have no cause to repent you of thing that ye do. For Seneca saith, he overcometh in an evil manner that repenteth him of his victory. Wherefore I pray you, let mercy be in your heart, to the effect and intent that God Almighty have mercy upon you in his last judgment. For St. James saith in his epistle, judgment without mercy shall be done to him that have no mercy of an white. When Melibœus had heard the great skills and reasons of Dame Prudence, and her wise information and teaching, his heart gan incline to the will of his wife, considering her true intent. He confirmed him anon and assented fully to work after her counsel, and thanked God, of whom proceedeth all goodness and all virtue, that he sent him a wife of so great discretion. And when the day came that his adversaries should appear in his presence, he spake to them full goodly, and said in this wise, albeit so that of your pride and high presumption and folly, and of your negligence and uncunning, ye have misborne you, and trespassed unto me. Yet forasmuch as I see and behold your great humility, and that you be sorry and repentant of your guilts, it constraineth me to do you grace and mercy. Wherefore I receive you into my grace, and forgive you utterly all the offences, injuries, and wrongs that you have done against me and mine, to this effect and to this end, that God of his endless mercy will at the time of our dying forgive us our guilts, that we have trespassed to him in this wretched world. For doubtless, if we be sorry and repentant of the sins and guilts which we have trespassed in the sight of our Lord God, he is so free and so merciable that he will forgive us our guilts, and bring us to the bliss that never hath end. Amen. End of Chaucer's Tale of Melibœus.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For further information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Andy Minter. The Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. Edited by D. Laing Purves. This reading is based on the book The Canterbury Tales and Other Poems. The original text contains poems by Chaucer and a lot of notes and explanations by the editor. To view these, please click on the Gutenberg text link on the LibriVox catalogue page of the Canterbury Tales. The Monk's Tale. The Prologue. When ended was my tale of Melibœus, and of Prudence, and of her benignity, our host said, as I am faithful man, and by the precious Corpus Madrian, I had liever than a barrel of ale, that good lief my wife had heard this tale. For she is no thing of such patience as was this Melibœus' wife Prudence. By God's bones, when I beat my knave, she bringeth me the great clubbed staves, and crieth, Slay the dogs every one, and break them both back and every bone. And if that any neighbour of mine will not in church unto my wife incline, or be so hardy to her to trespass, when she comes home she rampeth in my face, and crieth, False coward, wreak thy wife, by Corpus Domini! I will have thy knife, and thou shalt have my distaff, and go spin. From day till night right thus will she begin. Alas, she saith, that I was ever shape to wed a milksop or a coward ape, that will be overlaid with every wight. Thou darest not stand by thy wife's right. This is my life, but if that I will fight, and out at door anon I must me dight, or else I am lost. But if that I be like a wild lion, foolhardy, I wot well she will do me slay some day some neighbour, and then go my way. For I am perilous with knife in hand, albeit that I dare not her withstand. For she is big in arms, by my faith. That shall he find that her misdoeth or saith. But let us pass away from this matter. My lord the monk, quoth he, be merry of cheer, for ye shall tell us a tale truly. Lo, Rochester stands here fast by. Ride forth, mine own lord, break not our game. But by my troth I cannot tell your name. Whether shall I call you, my lord, Dan John, or Dan Thomas, or else Dan Albon? Of what house be ye, by your father's kin? I vow to God thou hast a full fair skin. It is a gentle posture where thou goest. Thou art not like a pennant or a ghost. Upon my faith thou art some officer, some worthy sexton, or some cellarer. For by my father's soul, as to my dome, thou art a master when thou art at home. No poor cloisterer, nor no novice, but a governor both wily and wise, and therewithal of brawns and of bones, a right well faring person for the nonce. I pray to God give him confusion, that first thee brought into religion. Thou wouldst have been a treadfowl aright. Hadst thou as great leave as thou hast might To perform all thy lust in engenderer, Thou hadst begotten many a creature. Alas, why wear'st thou so wide a cope? God give me sorrow, but, an I were pope, Not only thou, but every mighty man, Though he were shorn full high upon his pan, Should have a wife. For all this world is lorn. Religion hath ta'en up all the corn of treading, And we borrel men be shrimps. Of feeble trees there come wretched imps, That maketh that our heirs be so slender And feeble, that they may not well engender. This maketh that our wives will assay religious folk, for that they may better pay of Venus' payments than may we. God wot, no lushburgs pay ye. But be not wroth, my lord, though that I play. Full oft in game a sooth have I heard say." This worthy monk took all in patience, and said, "I will do all my diligence, as far as souneth unto honesty, to tell you a tale, or two, or three. And if you list to hearken hitherward, I will you say the life of Saint Edward, or else first tragedies I will tell, of which I have 100 in my cell. Tragedy is to say a certain story, as old books maken us memory, of him that stood in great prosperity, and is fallen out of high degree in misery, and endeth wretchedly. And they be versified commonly of 6 feet, which men call hexametron. In prose eke be indited many a one, and eke in metre in many a sundry wise. Lo, this declaring ought enough suffice. Now hearken, if ye like for to hear. But first I you beseech in this matter. Though I by order tell not these things, be it of popes, emperors, or kings, after their ages as men written find, but tell them some before and some behind, as now it cometh to my remembrance. Have me excused of mine ignorance. The Tale. I will bewail in manner of tragedy the harm of them that stood in high degree, and fell so that there was no remedy to bring them out of their adversity. For certain, when that Fortune list to flee, there may no man the course of her wheel hold. Let no man trust in blind prosperity. Beware by these examples true and old. At Lucifer, though he an angel were and not a man, at him I will begin. For though Fortune may no angel dear, from high degree yet fell he for his sin down into hell, where as he yet is in. O Lucifer, brightest of angels all, now art thou Satanas, that mayst not twin out of the misery in which thou art fall. Lo Adam in the field of Damascene, with God's own finger wrought was he, and not begotten of man's sperm unclean, and welt all paradise, saving one tree. Had never worldly man so high degree as Adam, till he for misgovernance was driven out of his prosperity to labour, and to hell, and to mischance. Lo Samson, which that was enunciate by the angel long ere his nativity, and was to God Almighty consecrate, and stood in noblesse, while that he might see, was never such another as was he, to speak of strength and thereto hardiness. But to his wives told he his secre, through which he slew himself for wretchedness. Samson, this noble and mighty champion, without weapon save his handes tway, he slew, and all to rent the lion, towards his wedding walking by the way. His false wife could him so please and pray, till she his counsel knew, and she untrue unto his foes his counsel gan bewray, and him forsook, and took another new. 300 foxes Samson took for ire, and all their tails he together band, and set the foxes' tails all on fire, for he in every tail had knit a brand. And they burnt all the combs of that lend, and all their oliveries and vines eke. 1,000 men he slew eke with his hand, and had no weapon but an ass's cheek. When they were slain, so thirsted him that he was well nigh lorn, for which he gan to pray that God would on his pain have some pity, and send him drink, or else must he die. And of this ass's cheek that was so dry, out of a wang-tooth sprang anon a well, of which he drank enough, shortly to say. Thus helped him God, as Judicum can tell. By very force at Gaza on a night maugre the Philistines of that city. The gates of the town he hath upplight, and on his back carried them hath he high on a hill, where as men might them see. O noble mighty Samson, lief and dear, hadst thou not told to women thy secret, in all this world there had not been thy peer. This Samson never cider drank, nor wine, nor on his head came razor none, nor shear, by precept of the messenger divine. For all his strength in his hairs were, and fully 20 winters, year by year, he had of Israel the governance. But soon shall he weep many a tear, for women shall him bring to mischance. Unto his leman Delilah he told, that in his hairs all his strength lay, and falsely to his foemen she him sold, and sleeping in her balm upon a day, she made to clip or shear his hair away, and made his foemen all his craft espien. And when they found him in this array, they bound him fast, and put out both his eyen. But ere his hair was clipped or ashave, there was no bond with which men might him bind. But now is he in prison in a cave, where as they made him at the quern grind. O noble Samson, strongest of mankind! O whilom judge in glory and richess! Now mayst thou weep with thine eyen blind, since thou from weal art fall'n to wretchedness. Then to this caitiff was, as I shall say, his foemen made a feast upon a day, and made him as their fool before them play. And this was in a temple of great array. But at the last he made a foul affray, for he 2 pillars shook and made them fall, and down fell temple and all, and there it lay, and slew himself and eke his foemen all. This is to say, the princes every one, and eke 3000 bodies were there slain, with falling of the great temple of stone. Of Samson now will I no more sayn. Beware by this example old and plain, that no man tell his counsel to his wife of such thing as he would have secret fain, if that it touch his limbs or his life. Of Hercules the sovereign conqueror sing his works land and high renown. For in his time of strength he bare the flower, he slew and reft the skin of the lion, he of the Centaurs laid the boast adown, he harpies slew, the cruel birdes fell, he golden apples reft from the dragon, he drew out Cerberus, the hound of hell. He slew the cruel tyrant Busiris, and made his horse to fret him, flesh and bone. He slew the fiery serpent venomous, of Aeschylus' 2 horns brake he one, and he slew Casus in a cave of stone. He slew the giant Antaeus the strong, he slew the grisly boar, and that anon, and bare the heaven upon his neck long. Was never wight, since that the world began, that slew so many monsters as did he. Throughout the wide world his name ran, what for his strength and for his high bounty, and every realm went he for to see. He was so strong that no man might him let at both the world's end, as saith trophy, instead of bounds he a pillar set. A leman had this noble champion, that highte Dejanira, fresh as May. And as these clerks make mention, she hath him sent a shirt fresh and gay. Alas, this shirt, alas, and well away, envenomed was subtly withal, that ere he had worn it half a day, it made his flesh all from his bones fall. But natheless some clerks her excuse, by one that highte Nessus, that it maked. Be as he may, I will not her accuse, but on his back this shirt he wore all naked, till that his flesh was for the venom blaked. And when he saw none other remedy, in hot coals he hath himself raked, for with no venom deigned he to die. Thus sturf this worthy mighty Hercules. Lo, who may trust on fortune any throw? For him that followeth all this world of press, ere he beware, is often laid full low. Full wise is he that can himself know. Beware, for when that Fortune list to glose, then waiteth she her man to overthrow, by such a way as he would least suppose. The mighty throne the precious treasure, the glorious sceptre and royal majesty that had the king Nebuchadnezzar. With tongue unnethes may described be. He twice won Jerusalem the city. The vessels of the temple he with him lad. At Babylon was his sovereign see, in which his glory and delight he had. The fairest children of the blood royal of Israel he did do gelden on, and make it each of them to be his thrall. Amongst others Daniel was one. That was the wisest child of every one, for he the dreams of the king expounded, where in Chaldea clerkes was there none that wist to what fine his dreames sounded. This proude king let make a statue of gold, 60 cubits long and 7 in breadth, to which image hath young and old commanded he to lout and have in dread, or in a furnace full of flames red he should be burnt that would not obey. But never would assent to that deed Daniel, nor his young fellows tway. This king of kings proud was and elate. He weened that God, that sits in majesty, might him not bereave of his estate. But suddenly he lost his dignity, and like a beast he seemed for to be, and ate hay as an ox, and lay thereout in rain. With wild beastes walked he, till certain time was come about. And like an eagle's feathers waxed his hairs, his nails like a bird's claws were, till God released him at certain years, and gave him wit, and then with many a tear he thanked God. And ever his life in fear was he to do amiss, or more trespass. Until that time he laid was on his bier, he knew that God was full of might and grace. His son, which that highte Balthazar, that held the reign after his father's day, he by his father could not beware, for proud he was of heart and of array, and eke an idolaster was he aye. His high estate assured him in pride, but fortune cast him down, and there he lay, and suddenly his reign gan divide. A feast he made unto his lordes all upon a time, and made them blithe be, and then his officers gan he call. "Go bring forth the vessels," said he, "which that my father in his prosperity out of the temple of Jerusalem reft. And to our high Goddes thanks we, of honour that our elders with us left." His wife, his lordes, and his concubines aye drank, while their appetites did last, out of these noble vessels sundry wines. And on a wall this king his eyen cast, and saw an hand armless that wrote full fast, for fear of which he quaked and sighed sore. This hand, that Balthazar so saw aghast, wrote Mane tekel phares, and no more. In all that land magician was there none that could expound what this letter meant. But Daniel expounded it anon, and said, "O king, God to thy father lent glory and honour, reign, treasure, rent. And he was proud, and nothing God he dread, and therefore God great wreche on him sent, and him bereft the reign that he had. He was cast out of man's company, with asses was his habitation, and ate hay, as a beast, in wet and dry, till that he knew by grace and by reason that God of heaven hath domination o'er every reign, and every creature, and then had God of him compassion, and him restored his reign and his figure. Eke thou, that art his son, art proud also, and knowest all these things verily, and art rebel to God, and art his foe. Thou drank'st of his vessels boldly, thy wife eke and thy wenches sinfully drank of the same vessels sundry wines, and heried false gods cursedly. Therefore to thee y shapen full great pain is. This hand was sent from God, that on the wall wrote Mane tekel phares. Trust me, thy reign is done, thou weighest nought at all. Divided is thy reign, and it shall be to Medes and to Persians given," quoth he, And ilk same night the king was slaw, And Darius occupied his degree, Though he thereto had neither right nor law. Lordings, example hereby may ye take, How that in lordship is no sickernes. For when that Fortune will a man forsake, She bears away his regne and his riches, And eke his friends, both more and less. For what man that hath friends through fortune, Mishap will make them enemies, I guess. This proverb is full sooth and full commune. Zenobia of Palmyrie the queen, As right Persians of her noblesse, So worthy was in arms and so keen, That no wight passed her in hardiness, Nor in lineage, nor other gentleness. Of the king's blood of Perse is she descended. I say not that she had most fairness, But of her shape she might not be amended. From her childhood I find that she fled office of woman, And to woods she went, and many a wild harte's blood she shed With arrows broad that she against them sent. She was so swift that she anon them hent. And when she was older she would kill Lions, leopards, and bears, all to rent, And in her arms wield them at her will. She durst the wild beasts' dens seek, And runnen in the mountains all the night, And sleep under a bush; and she could eke wrestle By very force and very might With any young man, were he ne'er so wight. There might nothing in her armes stand; She kept her maidenhood from every wight; To no man deigned she for to be bond. But at the last her friends have her married To Odenate, a prince of that country. All were it so that she them long tarried, And ye shall understand how that he Had such fantasies as had she. But natheless, when they were knit in fear, They lived in joy and in felicity, For each of them had other lief and dear. Save one thing, that she never would assent By no way that he should by her lie But once; for it was her plain intent To have a child, the world to multiply. And all so soon as that she might espy That she was not with child by that deed, Then would she suffer him do his fantasy eftsoon, and not but once out of dread. And if she were with child at thilke cast, No more should he play thilke game Till fully 40 days were past; Then would she once suffer him to do the same. All, were this Odenatus wild or tame, He got no more of her; for thus she said, It was to wives lechery and shame In other case, if that men with them played. 2 sons by this Odenate had she, The which she kept in virtue and letrour. But now unto our tale turn we. I say, so worshipful a creature, And wise therewith, and large with measure, So penible in the war, and courteous eke, No more labour might in war endure, Was none, though all this world men should seek. Her rich array it might not be told, As well in vessel as in her clothing. She was all clad in pierrie and in gold, And eke she left not, for no hunting, To have of sundry tongues full knowing. When that she leisure had, and fort intent, To learn bookes was all her liking, How she in virtue might her life dispend. And shortly of this story for to treat, So doughty was her husband, and eke she, That they conquered many regnes great I' th' Orient, with many a fair city Appurtenant unto the majesty Of Rome, and with strong hand held them fast, Nor ever might their foemen do them flee, Aye, while that Odenatus' days last. Her battles, whoso list them for to read, Against Sapor the king, and other mo', And how that all this process fell indeed, Why she conquered, and what title thereto, And after of her mischief and her woe, How that she was besieged and atake, Let him unto my master Petrarch go, That rights enough of this I undertake. When Odenate was dead, she mightily the regne held, And with her proper hand against her foes She fought so cruelly, that there n'as king nor prince in all that land. that was not glad, if be that grace fand that she would not upon his land warray. With her they made an alliance by bond, to be in peace, and let her ride and play. The Emperor of Rome, Claudius, nor before him the Roman Gallian, durst never be so courageous, nor no Armenian, nor Egyptian, nor Syrian, nor no Arabian, within the field durst with her fight, lest that she would them with her handes slain, or with her mien put them to flight. In king's habit went her sons too, as heirs of their fathers' reignes all, and Herimano and Timoleo their names were, as the Persians them call. But aye Fortune hath in her honey gall. This mighty queen may no while endure, Fortune out of her reign made her fall to wretchedness and to misadventure. Aurelian, when that the governance of Rome came into his handes tway, he shope upon this queen to do vengeance, and with his legions he took his way Towards Zenobie, and, shortly for to say, he made her flee, and at the last her hent, and fettered her, and eke her children tway, and won the land, and home to Rome he went. Amonges other things that he won, her car that was with gold wrought and pierrie. This great Roman, this Aurelian, hath with him led, for that men should it see, before in his triumph walked she, with gilt chains upon her neck hanging. Crowned she was as after her degree, and full of pierrie her clothing. Alas Fortune, she that whilom was dreadful to kings and to emperors, now galleth all the people on her, alas. And she that helmed was in stark stowres, and won by force townes strong and towers, shall on her head now wear a vitremite. And she that bare the sceptre full of flowers shall bear a distaff, her cost for to quite. Although that Nero were so vicious As any fiend that lies full low adown, yet he, as telleth us Suetonius, this wide world had in subjection, Both east and west, south and septentrion. Of rubies, sapphires, and of pearles white Were all his clothes embroider'd up and down, For he in gems greatly gan delight. More delicate, more pompous of array, More proud was never emperor than he. That ilke cloth that he had worn one day, After that time he would it never see. Nets of gold thread had he great plenty, To fish in Tiber, when him list to play. His lustes were as law in his degree, For Fortune as his friend would him obey. He Rome burnt for his delicacy, The senators he slew upon a day, To hear how that men would weep and cry, And slew his brother, and by his sister lay. His mother made he in piteous array, For he her womb slit to behold where he conceived was, So well away, that he so little of his mother told. No tear out of his eyen for that sight came, But he said a fair woman was she. Great wonder is how that he could or might Be doomsman of her dead beauty. The wine to bring him commanded he, And drank anon; none other woe he made. When might is joined unto cruelty, Alas, too deep will the venom wade. In youth a master had this emperor, To teach him lecherure and courtesy; For of morality he was the flower, As in his time, but if bookes lie. And while this master had of him mastery, He made him so cunning and so supple, That long time it was ere tyranny Or any vice durst in him uncouple. This Seneca, of which that I devise, Because Nero had of him such dread, For he from vices would him aye chastise Discreetly, as by word, and not by deed. Sir, he would say, an emperor must need Be virtuous, and hate tyranny. For which he made him in a bath to bleed On both his armes, till he must die. This Nero had eke of accustomance In youth against his master for to rise, Which afterward he thought a great grievance; Therefore he made him dien in this wise. But natheless this Seneca the wise chose in a bath to die in this manner, rather than have another tormentise, and thus hath Nero slain his master dear. Now fell it so, that Fortune list no longer the high pride of Nero to cherice, for though he were strong, yet was she the stronger. She thought thus: "By God, I am too nice To set a man that is full filled of vice In high degree an emperor him call. By God, out of his seat I will him trice. When he least weeneth, soonest shall he fall." The people rose upon him on a night For his default, and when he it espies, Out of his doors anon he hath him dight alone. And where he weened to have been allied, He knocked fast, and aye the more he cried, The faster shut they their doors all. Then wist he well he had himself misguide, And went his way, no longer durst he call. The people cried and rumbled up and down, That with his ears heard he how they said: "Where is this false tyrant, this Nero?" For fear almost out his wit he brayed, And to his gods piteously he prayed For succour, but it might not betide. For dread of this, he thought that died, And ran into a garden him to hide. And in this garden found he churles tway, That sat by a fire great and red. And to these churles two he gan to pray To slay him, and to girden off his head, That to his body, when that he were dead, Were no despite done for his defame. Himself he slew, he could no better rede, Of which Fortune laughed and had game. Was never captain under a king That reignes more put in subjection, Nor stronger was in field of all thing, As in his time, nor greater of renown, No more pompous in high presumption, Than Holofernes, whom Fortune kissed So likrously, and led him up and down, Till that his head was off, ere that he wist. Not only that this world had of him awe, For losing of riches and liberty, But he made every man reny his law. Nebuchadnezzar was God, said he; None other god should honoured be. Against his hest there dare no wight trespass, Save in Betulia, a strong city, Where Eliakim priest was of that place. But take keep* of the death of Holoferne. Amid his host he drunken lay at night Within his tent, large as is a burn. And yet, for all his pomp and all his might, Judith, a woman, as he lay upright Sleeping, his head off smote, and from his tent Full privily she stole from every wight, And with his head unto her town she went. What needeth it of King Antiochus to tell His high and royal majesty, His great pride, and his workes venomous? For such another was there none as he. Read what that he was in Maccabee, And read the proud wordes that he said, And why he fell from his prosperity, And in an hill how wretchedly he died. Fortune him had enhanced so in pride, That verily he weened he might attain Unto the stars upon every side, And in a balance weighen each mountain, And all the floodes of the sea restrain. And Godde's people had he most in hate, Them would he slay in torment and in pain, Weening that God might not his pride abate. And for that Nicanor and Timothy With Jews were vanquished mightily, Unto the Jews such an hate had he, That he bade graith* his car full hastily, And swore and said full disputatiously, Unto Jerusalem he would eftsoon, To wreak his ire on it full cruelly, But of his purpose was he let full soon. God for his menace him so sore smote With invisible wound incurable, That in his guts calf it so and bote, Till that his paines were importable. And certainly the wretche was reasonable, For many a man's guts did he pain, But from his purpose cursed and damnable. For all his smart he would not him restrain, But bade anon apparel his host. And suddenly, ere he was of it ware, God daunted all his pride and all his boast, for he so sore fell out of his chair, that it was his limbs and his skin to tear, so that he neither might go nor ride, but in a chair men about him bare, all forbruised both back and side. The wretche of God him smote so cruelly, that through his body wicked worms crept, and therewithal he stank so horribly, that none of all his men that him kept, whether so that he woke or else slept, he might not of him the stink endure. In this mischief he wailed and eke wept, and knew God lord of every creature. To all his host, and to himself also, full lutsome was the stink of his carrain. No man might him bear to and fro, and in this stink and this horrible pain he starve full wretchedly in a mountain. Thus hath this robber and this homicide, that many a man made to weep and plain, such guerdon as belongeth unto pride. The story of Alexander is so common, that every wight that hath discretion hath heard somewhat or all of his fortune. This wide world, as in conclusion, he won by strength, or for his high renown they were glad for peace to him to send. The pride and boast of man he laid adown, whereso he came, unto the world's end. Comparison yet never might be maked between him and another conqueror. For all this world for dread of him had quaked. He was of knighthood and of freedom flower. Fortune him made the heir of her honour. Save wine and women, nothing might assuage his high intent in arms and labour. So was he full of leonine courage. What praise were it to him, though I you told Of Darius and 100,000 mo', Of kings, princes, dukes, and earles bold, Which he conquered, and brought them into woe? I say, as far as man may ride or go, The world was his. Why should I more devise? For, though I wrote or told you ever mo' Of his knighthood, it might not suffice. 12 years he reigned, as saith Maccabee. Philip's son of Macedon he was, that first was king in Greece the country. O worthy gentle Alexander, alas, that ever should thee fall such a case! Empoisoned of thine own folk thou were. Thy six Fortune hath turned into an ace, and yet for thee she wept never a tear. Who shall give me tears to complain the death of gentleness and of franchise, that all this world had in his domain, and yet he thought it might not suffice, so full was his courage of high emprise? Alas, who shall me help to indite false fortune, and poison to despise, the which two of all this woe I wite? By wisdom, manhood, and by great labour, From humbleness to royal majesty, Uprose he, Julius the conqueror, That won all Occident by land and sea, By strength of hand, or else by treaty, And unto Rome made them tributary. And since, of Rome the emperor was he, Till that Fortune waxed his adversary. O mighty Caesar, that in Thessaly, Against Pompeius, father thine in law, That of the Orient had all the chivalry, As far as that the day begins to daw, That through thy knighthood hast them take and slaw, Save few folk that with Pompeius fled, Through which thou put all th' Orient in awe. Thank Fortune that so well thee sped. But now a little while I will bewail This Pompeius, this noble governor of Rome, Which that fled at this battle. I say one of his men, a false traitor, His head off smote, to win him favour of Julius, and him the head he brought. Alas, Pompey, of th' Orient conqueror, That Fortune unto such a find thee brought! To Rome again repaired Julius, With his triumph laureate full high. But on a time Brutus and Cassius, That ever had of his estate envy, Full privily have made conspiracy Against this Julius in subtle wise, And cast the place in which he should die With bodkins, as I shall you devise. This Julius to the Capitol went upon a day, as he was wont to gon, and in the Capitol anon him hent, this false Brutus, and his other fone, and sticked him with bodkins anon, with many a wound, and thus they let him die. But never groaned he at no stroke but one, or else at two, but if the story lie. So manly was this Julius of heart, and so well loved estately honesty, that, though his deadly wounds sore smart, his mantle o'er his hippes cast he, that no man should see his privity. And as he lay a dying in a trance, and wist verily that dead was he, of honesty yet had he remembrance. Lucan, to thee this story I recommend, and to Sweton and Valerie also, that of this story write word and end. How that to these great conquerors two Fortune was first a friend, and since a foe. No man trust upon her favour long, but have her in await for evermo'. Witness on all these conquerors strong. The rich Croesus, whilom king of Lyde, of which Croesus Cyrus him sore dread. Yet was he caught amidst all his pride, and to be burnt men to the fire him led. But such a rain down from the welkin shed, that slew the fire, and made him to escape. But to beware no grace yet he had, till Fortune on the gallows made him gape. When he escaped was, he could not stint for to begin a new war again. He weened well, for that Fortune him sent such hap that he escaped through the rain, that of his foes he might not be slain. And eke a sweven on a knight he met, of which he was so proud and eke so fain, that he in vengeance all his heart set. Upon a tree he was set, as he thought, where Jupiter him washed both back and side, and Phoebus eke a fair towel him brought to dry him with, and therefore waxed his pride. And to his daughter that stood him beside, which he knew in high science to abound, he bade her tell him what it signified. And she his dream began right thus expound. The tree, quoth she, the gallows is to mean, and Jupiter betokens snow and rain, and Phoebus with his towel clear and clean. These be the sunne's streames, sooth to sayn. Thou shalt a hangeth be, father, certain. Rain shall thee wash, and sun shall thee dry. Thus warned him full plat, and eke full plain, his daughter, which that called was Fenny. And hanged was Croesus, the proud king. His royal throne might not him avail. Tragedy is none other manner thing, nor can in singing crien nor bewail. But for that Fortune all day will assail, with unaware stroke, the reins that be proud. For when men trust her, then will she fail, and cover her bright face with a cloud. O noble, O worthy Pedro, glory of Spain, whom Fortune held so high in majesty, well ought men thy piteous death complain. Out of thy land thy brother made thee flee, and after at a siege by subtlety thou wert betrayed, and led into his tent, whereas he with his own hand slew thee, succeeding in thy reign and in thy rent. The field of snow, with eagle of black therein, caught with the lion, red coloured as the gleed, he brewed this cursedness and all this sin. The wicked nest was worker of the deed, not Charles Olivier, that took high heed of truth and honour, but of Armoric Ganilian Oliver, corrupt for meed, brought this worthy king in such a brike. O worthy Petro, king of Cypre also, that Alexander won by high mastery, full many a heathen wroughtest thou full woe, of which thine own lieges had envy, and for no thing but for thy chivalry. They in thy bed have slain thee by the morrow. Thus can Fortune her wheel govern and gie, and out of joy bring men into sorrow. Of Milan great Bernabo viscount, god of delight and scourge of Lombardy, why should I not thine clomben were so high? thy brother's son, that was thy double ally, for he thy nephew was, and son-in-law, within his prison made thee to die. But why, nor how, note I that thou were slaw. Of the Hugolin of Pise, the languor there may no tongue tell for pity. But little out of Pisa stands a tower, in which tower in prison put was he, and with him be his little children three. Th' eldest scarcely 5 years was of age. Alas, fortune, it was great cruelty Such birdes for to put in such a cage. Damned was he to die in that prison, for Roger, which that bishop was of Pise, had on him made a false suggestion, through which the people gan upon him rise, and put him in prison in such a wise as ye have heard. And meat and drink he had so small, that well unnethe it might suffice, and therewithal it was full poor and bad. And on a day befell, that in that hour when his meat wont was to be brought, the gaoler shut the doors of the tower. He heard it right well, but he spake nought, and in his heart anon there fell a thought, that they for hunger would do him dien. Alas, quoth he, alas that I was wrought. Therewith the tears fell from his eyen. His youngest son, that 3 years was of age, unto him said, "Father, why do ye weep? When will the gaoler bringen our pottage? Is there no morsel bread that ye do keep? I am so hungry that I may not sleep, nor would God that I might sleepen ever. Then should not hunger in my womb creep. There is no thing save bread, that one will lever." Thus day by day this child began to cry, Till in his father's barm adown he lay, And said, "Farewell, father, I must die," And kissed his father, and died the same day. And when the woeful father did it say, For woe his armes too he gan to bite, And said, "Alas, fortune, and well away! To thy false weal my woe all may I wite." His children weened that it for hunger was That he his armes gnawed, and not for woe, And said, "Father, do not so, alas, But rather eat the flesh upon us two. Our flesh thou gave us, our flesh take us fro, And eat enough." Right thus they to him said, And after that within a day or two They laid him in his lap adown, and died. Himself despaired, eke for hunger starf. Thus ended is this Earl of Pise. From high estate fortune away him carf. Of this tragedy it ought enough suffice. Whoso will hear it in a longer wise, Read the great poet of Italy, That Dante hight, for he can it devise From point to point, not one word will he fail. End of the Monk's Tale.